Woo.
Board games, it's what I'm talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and on the screen over there is a person known as Oliver.
Yeah.
And I try to tell you all that Oliver is not ridiculously tall. Oliver wears glasses, though, although this is something that you already know. I met Oliver at Aircon last. This was the last convention in UK's past. In March 2020, I believe we both went, and there we enjoyed ourselves and good times were spent.
Yes.
And we have had some good times together. That was, again, once more, me and Oliver. But we are now going to talk for a while that I've never had the opportunity beforehand. I'm sure it'll make me smile. But board games and all sorts of things, it's what we're talking about. Board games and all sorts of things. I'm not going to shout. Hello,
Yay,
and good
woo.
morning, good afternoon,
Hi.
good whatever it is, wherever you are. And hello, Sates, it is lovely to see you. Hello, Rob Harper. It is lovely to see you. And hello, Adam.
Hi, Adam. Special shout out. Hello, you're right.
And hello, Gavin from Jones Family Game Night. It's lovely to see you too.
Hi, Gavin.
So, for those who don't know, this is What's Going On? This is Bezzy Beats and Board Game Bladder, episode 323. I am streaming every day at 10 a.m. UK time for the next 77 days. And today we are meeting Oliver Kinne. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Perfectly, spot on. Well done.
Excellent. I feel a sense of accomplishment. You are so kind. We are going to be chatting about life. We're going to be chatting about Oliver's childhood a wee bit. You know, what Oliver gets up to when not blogging, the secret life of Oliver Kinne. And board game blogging, playtests, and whatever else comes up. We'll be talking about all sorts of things. And just waves at my screen. My team's meeting etiquette is Pavlovian now. Hello, everyone.
That's how it works. We like it.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Oliver, then there's all the links over there. You should be able to check them out. And yeah, you can. We'll go over them again at the end. So let's start off by asking, why did you come on? And you are a blogger. You are someone who just loves games. You podcast. You're a co-host of a podcast. You write for other people. You do a wee bit of translation. Is there anything else that people have to know about you right now? And why did you agree to come on?
Why did I agree? Well, because you're so lovely and you're always a great host. And I, have been watching some of your streams. So I thought, well, when the opportunity arrives, which it has finally done. I think we tried it before, but I just don't have time, day job and all that. So finally had a day off and this was it. So that's why I came on. Anything else to know about me? I don't know. I think you mentioned most of the things. I'm sure we'll cover more stuff as we're talking about things. So
yeah, we will mention all sorts of things. And I love this. Rob saying, "You're muted, Adam. Adam, you're on mute." Jinx. Yay for Teams and Zoom humor. Oh.
Phrase of 2020 and 2021. You're on mute.
Okay, so let's talk about things that we have been enjoying recently, whether it's games or just food or just having a nice walk yesterday. What are some of your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So what have you been enjoying recently? What was the last game you played?
Oh, the last game I played was actually last night, Fort by Leader Games. Played it for the first time with my wife, which was really good fun. I've had it for a while now. Maybe people have seen the unboxing, which I'm quite proud of. That's why I mentioned it. But no, it's a good fun game. And it was really easy to learn, which I find unusual for Leader Games because they're known for the complex games where you have lots of rules and things to follow and complex gameplay. But this one, yeah, started playing it pretty much within a few minutes, and then learned a few more things while playing it, and yeah, had good fun. So I want to play it again a few more times. Fort. Bye. Yeah.
Hello, Nicholas Straccia. And so, lovely to have you. And from what you're saying, you might say that the learnability is quite strong, or false.
Yes. It's yeah. Don't know where to go with those puns, but yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to reply. You can just roll your eyes and tell me to be quiet. It's all good. And so, yeah, I have not played anything for a couple of days. What did I do yesterday? I had a chat with Peter Blenkhorn and Harley and Scott and Paul. That was good fun. Actually, you know what? So I did play a couple of things. If you count game books as playing, and why wouldn't I? I got to play a few games of some short 4-page game books that Scott directed us all to yesterday. That was really interesting.
Nice.
There was one that was Terminal, which is like little computer terminals, which is quite interesting. One of them was done more in a dice rolling manner. One of them was done in a more comic manner. And it's really interesting how creative people can be when they have those restrictions.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a highlight for me. I guess another highlight was having my fortnightly meeting with a few folks that I have a support group with. We just kind of talk about how we're getting on. We try and support each other, and just for 15 minutes each. So we kind of say, okay, this is what we're doing for 10 minutes. And then the other person says, okay, how about this for 5 minutes? And it's just nice to grow alongside other people in that manner. And
nice.
So I'm really enjoying that. And as for food eating, I got the pleasure of having spaghetti bolognese with a salad made out of beetroot, coriander, fennel, and a little bit of red onion.
Ooh, nice. That sounds amazing. I can taste it already.
Man, my mouth is watering again. I should not have mentioned that. I don't know why I even put food eating there. It's kind of to give people an out, because in case someone is like, oh, I haven't been able to play any games recently, but people want to contribute. So, like, yes, if you're in the chat, feel free to let us know. What have you been enjoying? What games have you enjoyed? And
what have you been doing? I was just going to say, yesterday, actually, the weather was really nice over here, and I finally got back onto our allotment. We've got a little allotment, also almost behind our back garden, so it's really close. I popped over there, did a bit of digging, planted some raspberries. So it was nice just to be outside in the daylight, in an open space. All this lockdown and things all quite difficult. So being out for a few hours was just nice. And then I sat down for a bit, watched the birds, and listened to things, life basically. It was just very nice, and I was nicely tired afterwards as well. So a bit of physical work is always good for you as well. So
that does sound delightful and serene.
The digging wasn't quite so much fun, but it's all worth it, definitely. Physically tired, mentally tired, you sleep better. So definitely.
And despite what I'm flashing up there, I should say that I do not condone weekly beatings at all. But hello, Joanne. It is lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is my lovely friend, Oliver, blogger, and we will hear more. And we are just now going to ask Oliver, what is a typical day like for you in recent times? I understand it might be quite difficult now compared to 18 months ago, but in the past month, what's been a typical day?
So my typical day is I work now from home. I work in IT, so it's quite nice. I used to commute all the way over to Brighton. So I live in Eastbourne, so it's about an hour's bus drive, which was actually quite scenic. So I quite enjoyed the bus rather than taking the train. But now it's literally just get up in the morning, sort of usually 6:30ish, have breakfast, get dressed, and then walk over to my office and sit down and then spend the day working from home. So I usually start quite early just to get the day out of the way and then finish early as well. And then, when our daughter comes home from school, maybe talk to her, have dinner, and then hopefully in the evening, get some time to either watch something, do basically family time together if we can. And then, during the day, sometimes at lunch breaks, I might write a bit for the blog or do it in the evenings. So that sort of fit around the time I have. So if I have a half hour here, an hour there, I'll try to do some of that work. But a lot of it happens in the evenings and weekends. And then, that's during the week. And then weekends is all family time, really. I'm trying to do as much as possible, go for walks if we can, as I say, depends on weather, play a game indoors, watch a film, if it's really horrible, have some popcorn and things. So that's weekends, family time. And again, then, as I work on the blog some more, do some video work or, podcast stuff and all that. So that's a typical day. Sounds quite boring, doesn't it?
Oh, no, it sounds actually quite charming and delightful.
Thank you.
And so, no, I'm just enjoying the notion of, I first want to welcome, firstly, Why Dat Play, and I think this is the first time that I've seen your face, so a very warm welcome, and thank you for joining the channel. I hope that you enjoy your stay here. And if you have any questions, the sillier questions are just in a moment, and the more broader questions, I do try to, ask them. As long as they're on topic, you can ask them anytime. If there's something that, for example, I've forgotten to ask. How big is your family, may I ask?
Just three of us, so my wife and our daughter and I, which is just right, I think. We're thinking about having a second one, but I think one in the end was actually quite good. If you ask me, anyway.
So you feel like it's just a bit too much energy having multiple, is that? Because I hear the other argument that once you have a second child, then they can sort of play together, and that makes it slightly easier.
I mean, that's why we're thinking about having a second one to have a playmate. It didn't quite work out, but it was just, I think just having a second one, speaking to friends who had a second one, is not double the trouble. It's sort of like 3 or 4 times the trouble because they go in different directions and all that. So when they're a bit younger, looking after them is harder. But it is always nice seeing them play together. And, I have an older brother, so I know having a sibling is very nice to have that. But again, I think where we live as well, just felt like if we had another, maybe have to change, move house or something, or, create another room or something. So I don't know. It's all pros and cons, isn't it? But in the end, what we have is, very good, and we're happy with it. And we'll have a happy family life. So
I think that's the important thing. What works for you? And just looking at everything that everyone's been talking about in the chat, Bones John has been enjoying Martian Dice on Board Game Arena, a very chaotic game, and can't stop. That's one that I've had some fun with, especially. I think, yes, if you get some voices going on, if you're playing with people that I can definitely see the appeal in that. Rob's managed to have the first COVID vaccine shot. That sounds great.
Well
and
done.
So if UK Games Expo happens, then you will be ready for that. I don't know if it will, but...
No, I think you need a second vaccine anyway. I've had my first one as well, so...
No, but I mean, that's going to be in 12 weeks. So by the time that UK Games Expo is not until the end of July, if it happens, let me reiterate, if it happens, it will be at the end of July. Abyss on Board Game Arena. I did not realize that was on Board Game Arena. I think we should talk about digital gaming in a wee bit, because I've definitely found that I find it slightly more draining to play games digitally. I do love Board Game Arena because it makes it slightly easier, because at least you don't have to have the mental overhead of making sure that you are implementing all the rules correctly when you've also got the overhead of not being able to move things as easily. But I love... The only thing that I really keep remembering about this game is the whole gimmick of there is no text on the front of the box, just a big angry face looking at you, and it's such an arresting marketing gimmick. Have you played this one?
No, I've never played it. I've never played any of the ones that have been mentioned so far, as I can see.
You've not played Hearthstone?
No.
So this is based on World of Warcraft, the collectible card game.
Right.
So there was a World of Warcraft collectible card game, and then the license split, and then they made it as a standalone thing, basically, to say, okay, let's stop doing it physically, and it uses a very similar system, but then, unlike most CCGs, now you can use random numbers, and so a spell might do between 2 and 4 damage, for example, or there might be a spell that turns you into a random creature. You know, I don't know if those exactly exist. It's been a while since I played Hearthstone, but you know, definitely. And if you are playing side by side on 2 computers side by side, I can definitely understand the appeal of that. Ragusa, I playtested that, and by Fabio Lopiano, I think Venice, I played that. Is that the one by David, or is that the one by Fabio as well? I forget which one. But
I've played Deep Sea Adventure. Jamie, hello there. As mentioned in the chat, Cockroach Poker, and Deep Sea Adventure. I played Deep Sea Adventure and heard lots of good things about Cockroach Poker even as well. Hello,
yes,
Jamie. You're right.
Such a wonderful game. And hello, Jamie. It's lovely to have you join. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Jamie.
Jaws of the Lion. I've not played that. The simplified version of Gloomhaven. Heard great things about it. Heard great things about Calico. Not heard much about Tekken. Is that Tekken? I don't think I'm not actually even familiar with that game.
No.
But yeah, that sounds, and apparently Board Game Arena has a really good hiring policy.
Okay.
And someone might be incredibly biased. And Joanne says that Joanne likes the cards that are random because it gives you that element of surprise. And what do you feel about games? Do you like to calculate things? Do you like to plan ahead, or do you just like to go with the flow and do you enjoy little bits of dice rolling? Where do your tastes lie, Oliver?
It depends on how I feel and who I'm playing with. That tends to be my answer with lots of things. So if I play with our daughter, she enjoys 10-15 minute dice rolling games. So like some of the Min-Tin games from Subquark, and hello, probably not on the cast here at the moment, but yeah, David Miller and Subquark team, those sort of games, just roll a few dice, and then whoever gets the results in time wins, and there's no thinking. You just have a bit of fun, and that's great. And it's great. If, when we used to be able to go to restaurants and things, remember those days? That's the sort of game we might play as we're waiting for food and stuff like that. But then I also really enjoy have a couple of hours just focusing on a highly strategic game and working out what the strategy might be. So again, depends on how I feel, who I'm with, and all that. So, but I'm open to pretty much any games, really.
So you are very much an omni gamer. And hello, Yoda. It's lovely to have you as always. And yes, as Rob mentioned, Kakerlaken Poker might. I like even though I'm not German, I like the phrase Kakerlaken Poker. It just sounds a bit fun. Kakerlaken. It's a bit more fun to say than cockroach. And for example, Joanne gives this example: when you have a bunch of minions, you can evolve them all for 1 level higher, or maybe they turn into random creatures, and all sorts of things go on.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's one. I believe it's one of those free to play, but you can pay money to get better cards if you're not willing to grind. So,
okay.
Apparently, I'm saying it long. Kakerlaken.
Kakerlaken.
I mean, you are German, aren't you, Oliver? So surely you say it correctly.
Kakerlaken. That's better. It's probably more of the. I don't know. There's an accent there if you say it's best, but what. So
I said Kakerlaken.
I understand. Yeah.
So it's not Kakerlaken, it's Kakerlaken?
It's you very close. I don't think there's a problem there.
Yeah, Xeets is just having a go at me for. You're all lovely except for. You are also lovely, Xate. Lots of love to you.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the questionably quick questions.
Ooh.
So, are you ready?
Okay,
What time
right.
is it where you are, and where exactly are you?
It is 19 minutes past 10, and I'm in Eastbourne, south coast of the United Kingdom. Beautiful south coast. Quick answer for a quick question.
And the next question: books or podcasts?
Ooh, podcasts. Definitely. I'm a very slow reader, so books I enjoy reading, but it takes me a long time. Whereas both my wife and daughter, they like read a thick book within a day, 2 days, 3 days, you know, and I probably would take me a month, if not a year, to read the same book. So podcasts is more for me. I can listen to things more quickly.
Imagine someone was upset and went to go to work in their garden. What would you say to make them less upset?
Work in their garden. Oh, wow. What would I say? I would ask them why they're upset, whether there's anything I can do to help. I don't know. It depends, really.
I think it was because I said that Xate isn't lovely before I retracted my statement.
All right.
But anyway, in all seriousness, Bones John asks, what is the strangest game you've ever played?
Ooh, that is a good question. The strangest game.
In all seriousness, love you lots. And also, thank you very much, Jamie, for following. Lots of love.
Yay. I suppose I would have to say the cost, because it's got such a serious background. That's probably the strangest in that sense. Other than that,
The
I mean,
cost.
yeah, by Spielberg's or yeah.
Yeah, I've not heard much about it other than what you put out there, and it does definitely feel like something that. So, give us the overview.
Yeah, so the cost is all set against the background of the asbestos scandal, what do you want to call it? So, you know, asbestos used to be mined freely without much protection or anything, become obviously very highly valuable because of its properties. And like any of these products, obviously were mined for high profit until it became clear that, as we know now, it would cause cancer in people working without protection. And then for a long time, you know, companies were still mining it with, you know, out investment in protection for their workers. Eventually, it did get banned in more and more countries, but it is really pretty much recent history. And I think even to this day, there are some countries who allow the import of asbestos. And we're talking about first world countries. So it is all very controversial. And in the game, you play basically a company that mines and manufactures asbestos. And you have to decide whether you workers do that with protection or do it without protection. If you do it without protection, one of the workers will die, but there's no other penalty. So it is literally just a moral decision. And to win the game, really, you should always mine without protection, because that gives you the biggest profit. And yeah, so the people I've played it with, they all played it once just because I asked them to, but I did make them aware beforehand because I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable, because, you know, there may be you know, reasons why they might not want to play it. You know, might be too close to home for whatever reason. But those who have played it with me will only wanted to play it once because of that sort of moral reason behind it and the decision making in the game. So it is tough to play, I think, and I think I quite like it because of that, because it does make you wonder. And the designers intentionally didn't put a penalty for, you know, mining without protection, because they didn't want the game to penalize you. They wanted you to make that decision freely yourself. So that was a, you know, conscious decision on that part. And that's why it's strange. It's not the sort of game where I would recommend to people and say, you definitely have to play it because it's really good fun. But I would recommend it if you want to try, you know, see how a game can deal with some serious topics, such as asbestos in this case, and how it can be done pretty well. I think the cost deals with it really well, because, as I say, there's no penalty, and the rule book talks about asbestos, gives you all the facts and things. So, you know, I do strongly advise you do read the rule book, even if you know, someone explains rules to you, just so you have the facts there, and then you can make a decision on how do you feel about it. Do you want to win and people die, or do you happily not let people die, but then probably not win? So very interesting.
I really appreciate the fact that we're getting more and more games that aren't. I mean, they could be seen as escapism, but are not, frivolous. It's not frivolous escapism. It's almost showing us this other part of reality, potentially something quite horrible, something potentially harrowing. And I really appreciate that, and I think everyone should do it. When you're showing someone a documentary about the Second World War, you would probably say to them, hey, this is what's going on here. And so they've got an idea of the kind of atrocities that they might see on the screen.
Yep.
And if you're saying, hey, we are going to play a game, someone might, we're getting to the point now where, yes, we can. I don't think there's anything wrong in just having fun, frivolous things. I mean, I make fun of frivolous things, and I continue to do that. I did the Wee Whimsical Creatures game, but I think there's something really meaningful, and potentially it can affect change and encourage greater understanding of the world around us. And I bought into The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr because I think that, yeah, they've just done such a good job in trying to push what games can be with that, with Spirit's Island, even with Freedom on the Underground Railroads and all of these games.
No, I agree. And Gavin's just saying that his granddad died of asbestos at the docks in Southampton, which is, it shows you it has, and that's why I made sure that the people who played with me were aware of what they're letting themselves in for. There's another really good game, and that's for my German background, and I was born in Berlin. I saw the wall come down, and I've reviewed this game. It's called Stasi raus, es ist aus, or in English, Stasi over and out. It's duolingual, so it's English and German, so you can play it. And that really tells you about the time of the fall of the wall and the Stasi, the secret service who encouraged people to spy on each other, had huge dossiers about pretty much the whole population, photos and trying to get into their secret life. And in the game, you actually play a Stasi officer trying to basically shred all these documents that might show that you've been one of the bad people. And it is really clever. So over time, more and more people, I mean, I don't know how many people know about the history, but if you've been watching Deutschland 89, which has been on TV recently, again, very well worth watching. People were starting to be aware of what's going on and started, going to the various offices, trying to break in and get to those files, which they in the end did, while the Stasi was still shredding stuff. And that's what the game is about. So you basically Stasi officer, and more people are accumulating outside your office, and you're trying to send them away with excuses. And need to decide, do you shred this file or this other file? And to start with, you can basically shred anything you want because there's plenty of time. And as the game goes on, you do have to make more and more decisions. And all the cards have, based on real documents. So it might say, oh, this is a file about a certain person that has this information in there, or this is a, camera that they used, or you do learn about all the history. And it's set up that you can actually learn it as you play it. So that the deck, especially card deck that you draw cards, is almost a hand management game, deck building game, sort of. And yeah, it's the deck is stacked in such a way that you can actually learn it as you play it, which is what I did. So I've got a playthrough on my YouTube channel as well. And again, it's great, and you can replay it several times afterwards. And again, it puts you in the role of the Stasi officer. So again, you have to make those decisions about, oh, I need to win, I need to shred these documents, but do I want to do that? And read the cards and all that. It's very well made. And it's made actually by two people who were involved in recovering the files and going through them and archiving them and working out what actually went on. So it's based, it's almost like a scientific game, if you like, in that sense, historic document. So,
and yeah, I possibly should have put up a wee banner, but a quick hello, Alex, and hello, Hal. It is lovely to see you join us. Thank you very much. And hello, Ian. It is lovely to have you as well. So that is Ian, who used to have purple hair, probably doesn't right now, works for Asmodee. But why that play? I have a hard time playing games with difficult topics. well, I guess more on the nose, difficult topics. I play games of colonialism, but the addition of slave cards in Endeavour, Age of Sail, makes it so I haven't taken it off the shelf in a very long time. That is, I think it's important that, yeah, maybe we can get into this a wee bit, but I'm really pro tackling these in a thoughtful way. Frankly, I think there's potentially more damage going on in doing colonialism in a mindless, thoughtless way than there is in doing it in a way that's, that actually starts to uncover, okay, what was going on, and actually thinks about these things. I think that's, if you're the more difficult, the more life-affecting a topic, I feel like the more you should care about it and do research into it when designing the game.
Absolutely. I think that there's a place for all of these games that try and bring to the fore all those historic things that happened and trying to actually teach you something without being like a learning game in that sense. I mean, they can still be entertaining in the sense that you can actually enjoy playing it, but you're learning stuff at the same time. And I think there is a place for those, but unfortunately too many games, well, I mean, maybe not anymore, but certainly in the recent history that have come out, seem to be just sweeping all that history under the carpet just to give you a bit of entertainment. I'm thinking, well, is that really necessary? Couldn't it have been set somewhere else? The setting, doesn't really justify the mechanisms, if you like. It could have been set somewhere else and been just as good a game. So why set it in a part of the history that has been swept under the carpet? Bring it to the fore and explain what's been happening and make people aware, and then hopefully can learn something as you play it. I mean, a lot of people should really know about what has been happening, so who knows? But if you do deal with those things, get the advice, get the historic background, put something in there, and not just, I think, like I was saying with the cost, there's obviously information in the rules, and that's obviously important to have the information about asbestos in the rule book itself or somewhere in the box. But I do think the gameplay itself should tackle the topic as well. So just reading about asbestos is great, but I don't just want to play the game. I want to actually play the game and have to make that decision. So if you can do that, then you're actually learning something as you play. And that's difficult. I get why there aren't that many games out there that do that. It's easier just to set it, have a game in the Caribbean, because we all know the Caribbean from our sort of romantic tinted glasses and all that. But the seriousness is different behind it. You're doing a bit of yoga there.
Of course, as Stream Elements reminds us, it is stretching time.
Okay.
So just to remember that we are, whoops, there we go, and a wee bit of a stand up and a sit. And yep, I agree. Yes, let's have some thought-provoking things. Let's not lose the action comedy analog. Games can be fun, games can be thought-provoking, games can be all sorts of things. And for sure, you need to communicate that. And yeah, I had to talk about how games can be evil, actually, where if games don't tell you what they're about going in. Apparently there's a Stonewall Uprising game that's in development, and I think there's all sorts of really fascinating things thanks to the Zenobia Award, which I think is a really strong initiative that they created, which I've heard from one person somewhat involved is meant to be an annual thing. Just you can't get confirmation until it's actually announced the second time, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes of it. And I think that if people know, hey, there is this annual award, that might encourage more people to say, hey, let me try and get a game together for this. I mean, but let's go to slightly lighter things. And from what's the strangest game we've played to Jamie Adams asking tea or coffee. Basically, do you have a hot drink of choice?
I love coffee, but I need to, drink a bit less. So it's tea for me at the moment, but probably ask me next week. We'll be back onto the coffee. Thanks for that question, Jamie. I appreciate it. Now you know what I'm drinking at games night.
What's the sound of your favorite color?
Oh, it's a squeaky sound. But I'm not going to tell you what the color is.
So now people need to guess the sound. No, now
It's
people know.
it's funny actually. I think I have a little bit of synesthesia, a tiny bit. I'm not talking that I can hear colors, but I do get that a bit. That like a color could be a number, or I do get a little bit of sound. So like for me, green is like a squeaky sound. Imagine like a squeaky toy, that sort of thing. But I don't hear it when I see green. It's not, as I say, not quite so much, but there's something there. So good question.
What's the weirdest thing ever taken on public transport by you?
Weird, I don't know. I used to transport bouquets of flowers back from Brighton back home, like for our anniversary, wedding anniversary or things like that. And that is quite difficult to have a huge bouquet of flowers and you're trying to sit down and you're squished in the bus somewhere. So yeah. Weird, but yeah.
Yoda kind of flips that question around. What's the smell of your favorite sounds?
The smell. I don't think I have that type of synesthesia. Well, the smell of my favorite color would obviously be like a fresh grass green smell. But so yeah, I don't know. Don't know the answer to the specific question.
Sound?
Sorry, do I have a favorite sound? I think white noise, if anything. The waves, at the seafront, or just wind going through leaves, or that sort of thing, the rustling, so more to white noise.
So then maybe the smell would be some sort of vague, salty...
Yeah, could be.
And, okay, this is... If you were forced to choose an entirely new identity, what name and backstory would you write yourself? Don't need to put too much thoughts into it. You have to do it right now, in the next 20 seconds.
Right, backstory. Well, but I have to be a spy, but obviously I couldn't write it as an actual backstory. So I'd have to think. I'd probably be a 30-something guy called James. Oh, I'm going to go for James Adams now because Jamie Adams is in the chat. That's pre-programmed now. And I'd live somewhere in the suburbs of London as a salesman, trading salesman. But really, I'm a spy.
And I do like the sound of a cat purring. That is a lovely sound.
That is true, yeah.
What's the best German dessert or sweet? And what's the best British one?
Right, the best German one is spaghetti ice cream. So if you ever find that in Germany, when I was last in Germany, I tried to hunt it down, and I only found one ice cream parlor who did it. So imagine, I guess
you could probably imagine. Is it available in the city of Essen?
I haven't seen it there. Last time I went to Germany, I actually went to Hamburg, and they had one ice cream parlor there in the whole of Hamburg that I could find that did that. But yeah, basically vanilla ice cream squeezed through like, what do you call it, the mincer. So you get like strands of vanilla ice cream, and then you have like strawberry sauce or something on top of it, and then maybe white chocolate sprinkled on top, like it looks like spaghetti bolognese. And then UK crumble, any good crumble, fruit crumble.
Are you thinking maybe a raspberry and apple?
Raspberry and apple, yeah, that'll do. Yes. Spaghetti ice, yeah. Thank you very much.
I mean, States will have less of this, dessert shaming. How do you respond to these allegations? Do you just kind of ignore them, or?
I'm a child at heart, so it's fine.
You were in Hamburg, and your answer is not Franzbrötchen.
Oh, what's that? Is that like a herring roll? No, I'm a vegetarian, so if that's what it is, you're probably talking about like a herring roll or something, like a fish roll. No, unfortunately, not for me. Sachertorte, yeah, thank you. That's a good one as well.
Okay, so let's say you were stranded in your house, and you weren't allowed to go out.
Okay.
And you had to, let's just pretend, for example, that you weren't allowed to see other people very much.
Okay, wow.
I know this takes quite a leap of imagination. Now, imagine that all of this was about to end. Maybe you get your vaccine. Maybe at some points in the future, everything is going to come together and you will be able to see people and hug people and go to conventions together. What do you think is the one of the things that you're most looking forward to?
I think the first thing I'm looking forward to is having our games night again in person, because we're doing it online at the moment, and we're talking about digital platforms a bit earlier. But and that's good fun. But some games you have to play in person. I think that's what I'm really looking forward to. That's probably the first thing. Obviously, family I see every day, so don't think that I don't want to look. I'm not looking forward to seeing my family. You know, my wife and daughter are here, and obviously visiting my parents or them coming over to visit us is also something I look forward to, but that probably wouldn't happen quite as quickly. So the first thing would probably be our weekly games night, meeting in person again, playing a game, touching pieces, being in front of each other, you know, and enjoying that again. So that's the first one. And then obviously conventions will be the next thing. Looking forward to going to UK Games Expo, maybe Essen again, Aircon, you know, when all these things happen again. Be quite nice to do that and see all these other people.
Okay, the final question, which is a follow-up from that. You mentioned UK Games Expo. That's meant to happen, I believe, the 30th of July. It might be the 31st, but anyway, it's end of July, start of August, that weekend, whatever weekend that is. Yeah. And will you have had both your vaccines by then? And if it runs, do you think you will go?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I hope I should have both my vaccines, you know, given that they should be 12 weeks apart. We'll see whether that's actually going to happen with all the controversies going on about vaccines at the moment. But assuming that has happened, I don't know whether it's then still too soon. I mean, if the government was relaxing, you know, movement and all that, maybe. But again, UK Games Expo is an international event. So I don't know how many international visitors would be there. Would there become more like a local event? I say it's very tempting because it's just nice if other people are going and see them, because it's one of those times when you can see other people you only, you know, otherwise know via Twitter or, you know, haven't really met in person. It is tempting, but realistically, I don't know whether I would go. It would really depend, and it's so hard to tell. I mean, it's not that far away really, but currently, you know, even next week seems to be a long distance away. So we'll have to see how it goes. I definitely say would love to do it if it was safe to do so. You know, there were no restrictions. You know, it makes sense. I mean, it has to be sensible as well.
I think it's going to have to be a primarily UK-based event, if not entirely. I don't think there's any way of recapturing the international feel, but even a UK-based event for 1,000 people, if that is safe, if that is reasonable, if that is sane,
lots of ifs. That's the thing. That's the problem. Realistically, I just don't think it will happen. So, or if it does happen, I don't know who will be attending, which is a real shame because I do root for all these events being able to take place again. But as I say, I don't think it's realistic. But yeah, with all these ifs in place, if it was, you know, safe to do so, everyone had their vaccinations, you know, there's really no risk of spreading it, we don't get a third wave or fourth wave or whatever, then yeah, let's do it. But I just can't see it at the moment. We'll see.
And chat has just exploded with all the love for Crumble, which is king or queen. And Sate's explaining that it's a cinnamony sweet baked good, the one that was mentioned, the Fradsbrutchen.
Okay.
And so apparently you're missing out in one of the things.
We'll have to try that next time.
Apparently talking about glazed coverings and Sachertorte, and a question of what is the crunchy nutty stuff they have on the top of some German desserts. Are you familiar with this, Oliver?
Crunchy nutty stuff? Is it nuts? I don't know. You have to tell me what the desserts are. I think probably normally it is some sort of nut thing. You know, like might be hazelnuts or walnuts. Usually those sort of two nuts. I've got a cat joining me as well on the chat. I've got a tail here. Speaking about cats purring just now. Yeah, so I don't know. I'd have to know. Strudel. Does it have nuts?
I don't know. So what we're hearing is, you know, even though Oliver may be German, you're not necessarily coming as an expert in German desserts.
No, I don't know everything about Germany.
Yes, I want to just make that clear.
But no, I would reckon it's probably, I would say it's walnuts or hazelnuts, probably, you know, cut up.
But we will have to move on, and it's been a good time talking about all these questionably quick questions, but let's talk about a brilliant thing.
Brilliant thing.
What's a little thing which is brilliant? Do you have an object or a thing that you want to talk about here?
I want to talk about getting our daughter back to the games table. That is, to me, the brilliantest thing that's happened in the last few weeks. With Sleeping Gods, if I may talk about that briefly, by Red Raven Games.
No, any game. Of course, you may talk about Sleeping Gods.
Yeah, so to me, just the fact that she really enjoys the game, and in a long time, it's been the first time that she actually asked to play it again, saying, "Oh, can we play Sleeping Gods again tonight?" And just that, the proud dad moment, the proud board game dad moment as well, I suppose. To me, that outweighs anything. That always puts a huge smile on my face. The fact that we found a game that she loves playing and she wants to play. It's not me saying, "Oh, shall we play this?" No, Daddy. Okay. It's more like, let's play this again. So, best thing ever.
That is lovely, kind of being able to share that time around the table.
Yeah.
And hello, Idol Michael. Lovely to see you as well.
Hi.
Well, so let's, as we move on, of course, feel free to comment, ask questions from Like Follow. We'll try to get to a bit more on topic, whatever that means, talking a bit more about games and Oliver's life and a bit less about German desserts. But if you want to chat about German desserts in chat, you can. Yeah. You can chat about whatever you want. But
share your recipes.
Yeah, why not? Share your recipes, because apparently here's one person who has to learn more recipes.
Yeah, tell me, give me a strudel recipe, maybe.
So let's talk about you, Oliver, because that's why you're here. Who are you? And yes, I know that you're a blogger. I know that you enjoy games. I know you enjoy sometimes playtesting or translating. But what do you do outside of board games? What's our... there's a life outside of board games. So what's...
Is there? Apparently there is, yeah. No, apart from my job, as I say, family keeps me busy as well, which is nice. And then, as I sort of alluded to earlier, I love gardening as well. So we have a decent-sized back garden, so lovely flowers and plants and whatever in there. And then we also have an allotment, so where we grow our vegetables and fruit and things, with some lovely apple trees and some plum trees. And to me, gardening has always, well, not always, but for a very, very long time been my escape, before board games even. So coming home from work, a stressful day or something at work, me literally going out through the conservatory into the garden, stepping into the garden, suddenly I was in another world. All the worries were gone. I didn't have to think about anything. So that's my sort of mental recharge, other than board games, that being outdoors, but specifically garden, allotment, that sort of thing. Even though we do go for walks and things as well, obviously along the seafront, or we live near the South Downs, so going up on the Downs is very nice as well. But I'm not very much of a walker, really. That's more my wife. But obviously spending time with them is with my wife and our daughter is nice either way. So yeah, gardening, horticulture is sort of my other thing. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of horticultural questions now. How do you grow potatoes?
Are you attracted then to games that span, that world? Games that are a little bit about gardening or growing plants, or not particularly?
Funnily enough, no. I think that's like with some things. If you're really into that hobby anyway, you don't need more of that in your other hobby. I think, to me, board games and horticulture are probably two different hobbies. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing a gardening game. I might be very critical and say, that's not how you grow carrots or something, but it would have to be quite accurate. And maybe that's why I'm not playing them. But no, I think with board gaming, it's more escapism into another world completely. So, whatever it may be, whether it's a space theme or some fantasy theme or an actual historic theme. Clans of Caledonia I always bring up. It's one of my favorite games as well. So, being in Scotland for a bit and just focusing my mind on that. But yeah, I'm not, no sort of crossover there at the moment, even though we do play games outside as well sometimes.
And do you have any favorites agricultural games or agricultural games that you can tolerate at least?
I can't really think of any agricultural games that I've played. As I say, the closest maybe Clans of Caledonia, because you have
Agricola?
sheep. I've probably played that once. I think I've written a review about Agricola, All Creatures Great and Small, but that was a digital version as well, so I haven't played it since or anything, so it didn't grab me as such. But yeah, no, can't think of anything.
That's totally fair. And it's interesting how people, it's like when folks say, oh, wow, you've not watched Star Wars?
Yeah.
I mean, I have watched quite a few of the Star Wars films, but I don't think there's any single game that anyone should be aghast. Oh my God, you've not played.
I think there's probably lots of games that are classics and I should be playing and haven't played, but
should is
a
strong word.
Yeah,
it's meant to be fun.
Yeah, true.
I mean, unless you are considering, putting asbestos into your building, in which case maybe play the cost so you can get some understanding of it.
Maybe, yeah.
Let's go back to childhood, and let's talk about what's your first memory that you're willing to share.
Ooh, I think as a child growing up, I always remember our kitchen. So I was born in Berlin, and if people asked at the time, it was West Berlin. Not that it really matters anymore. And so I grew up with the wall, being always there, not knowing any difference. But I think the smallest, sort of when I was the youngest, or the oldest memory, if you like, is probably standing next to my mum in the kitchen while she was cooking. I think I was always interested in baking. It was probably another smaller hobby, baking things, but not quite so big as gardening. And very dim. I mean, it's just like a black and white memory of the floor and the units in the kitchen, and my mum sort of towering over me because I was so little. That's probably the earliest memory. Not so much the smells, the sounds either, though. It's more the sort of visual.
So that probably instilled a love of baked goods and agriculture in your mind?
Maybe. I think, the horticulture, should I say, comes actually from my nan. She was a trained gardener. She had a big garden, and we spent my brother and I spent a lot of time at her place after school and things during the week because both my parents were working. And then obviously in the garden as well. So I would pick up things, pruning roses or planting plants. And my brother and I both had a little garden within her garden as well. We would plant tulips and things like that. So that's where that comes from my nan. And she's sort of still with me in our garden. I've got a few roses there. So it's like, that's where my nan is, And then, baking, I guess, from my mum as well. So she used to bakes and Pflaumenkuchen, Streuselkuchen. What's right there?
And where were you? I mean, where were you growing up?
So my childhood was spent, and my teenage years were spent in Berlin. So I grew up there. As I say, I grew up with the wall, knowing that there was always around. I don't know how many people know about the history, but West Berlin was basically surrounded by a wall because it was inside East Germany. And there was another wall between West Germany and East Germany. But as a West Berliner, you basically lived on an island. And I think that's why the sort of Berlin sense of humor is similar to the English sense of humor, the sort of island sense of humor, not completely, but I think there's a bit of an overlap. We grew up thinking the wall will always be there. We'll never see it fall. And then, as we know in history, things happened. I remember going to school. So there have been peaceful demonstrations in Leipzig and other places in East Germany for probably a couple of weeks by then, if not longer. And the worry always was, sorry, I'm doing a quick history lesson here.
No, it's
not getting too serious. The worry was that obviously the Russians might send tanks over again as they did before. And that didn't happen. Obviously, Perestroika was happening. Gorbachev was trying to, be a bit more open to the West and all that. And then, eventually the wall came down and, went to school, heard on the news in the morning that on the radio that apparently, the wall was falling down. So we went to school, we talked to the teachers and said, look, this is a monumental event. We have to see this. This is once in a lifetime. We need to basically go out there to the various places and see what's going on. Can we go? Teachers deliberated, came back and said, no, we can't let you go. I think it was 89, I was 16. So they couldn't let us go because they didn't have the parental agreements. We left anyway, of course. It was to us was like a foregone conclusion. And And yeah, we went to the various crossing places, went to the Kudam, the big sort of shopping street. We saw the queues of people getting their welcoming money, and it was, an amazing moment. And then the wall was closed again that night because there was a confusion. So yeah, very briefly, the wall was shut again, and people who had come over from the east to the west couldn't get back. And then I think the next morning it was all a done deal, and the actual wall was torn down. So the border crossings were open and shut. So yeah, so that was my history. And then eventually it came over to the UK, but that wasn't really until I was probably about 20, 19, 20, something like that. So yeah, the childhood and school years and all that were there on Germany. What a brilliant memory. Thank you, Gavin. Yeah. I very much relish it. And that's why if you ask me about walls, you know what my answer is.
Do you see a David Hasselhoff?
Oh God, don't. Yeah, apparently he brought the wall down. Yeah, didn't happen. No, I didn't see him. He came much later.
Okay, so that was David Hasselhoff's kind of trying to take credit for something that wasn't that. Yeah,
that's all right. That's right, Gavin.
I met David Hasselhoff one time. They were a bit. Anyway, let's. Random question: does photosynthesis count as an agricultural game? Maybe it's...
Jamie, I like that. If it does, then I have played an agricultural game. Absolutely. That's true, actually. It is, or horticulture. No, it's true. Yeah. Photosynthesis. There you go. Thank you.
He prefers to be called the Hoff. It's less hassle.
Yay. Well
Give
done.
yourself 100 points, Rob. Give yourself 100 points.
Another 50 from me.
Hey, okay, fine. Okay. In an unprecedented move, okay, give yourself 150 points. Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, because there are actually points, It's not.
There?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
we give Jamie another 50 points then for photosynthesis, I think.
I mean, okay, you're allowed to give points as well, but don't go crazy. Don't go crazy. Okay, so Rob, you're a mod... Wait, yeah, I'm fairly sure Rob can give people points. So if you can't do it, if it doesn't work with you, then Alex. So how did you get into board games, and what are some of your favorites?
Right, how did I get into board games? Again, history, growing up in Germany, card games, trick-taking games are very big. So Skat, Doppelkopf, Bridge, not so much for me specifically, but all those games I used to play. Growing up, my parents would play it, I would watch, didn't quite get it, and then over the years learned it and play it, and would play in school. But that was trick-taking games. And then at home we would have, obviously, Monopoly, the family classic, like everyone has. But my brother would sort of start buying other roll and move games. There was one called Winnetou, which is about it's a book series, sort of think like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn type thing, but in the Wild West, written by someone who's never been in the Wild West, but a German author, very famous and all that, Karl May. So we started playing that, and then he bought like a stock market game, and then he was actually very good. He started then sort of meshing them together. So we would take bits of one game, add it to the others. He would take a turn in one game, use the money from another game to buy something in the third game. And he was very creative, so he would actually sort of design his own game at some point as well. So that was quite good. So that there was always a sort of board game history thing in the family. And then growing up, obviously, after school, university, board games were less my thing. I got into IT, so computer games were more of my thing at that point. And then wasn't really when I came up to the UK, started to make some friends again. And one of our friends, Tom, quick shout out, I don't know whether he's in the chat. We used to go to the pub, just chat, have drinks, and he brought games with him. And I always think it was Citadels that he brought. Might have been something else, but that's the first game I remember playing. And yeah, that sort of started from there. He brought more and more games. Eventually said, well, let's go back to my place because we can't play all the games in the pub. There's not enough room on the table. We started playing things like Lords of Waterdeep, and then I started buying games. Another friend of ours started buying games, and we sort of started getting a pool. And at some point I thought, well, I really enjoy this. I want to try something else. And I always enjoyed writing. creative writing specifically. So I've been writing science fiction stories just for myself for fun. I've self-published a little children's story as well, about a teddy bear, and wrote it in German and in English. So I always enjoyed writing. I thought, well, I could write about board games, not necessarily reviews. That was never my thing to start with. It was just about, okay, what am I interested in? Any sort of ideas? So, talk about mechanisms, talk about things that, as I say, I just was thinking about. And that's how the blog came about. Once a week would release my sort of thought piece, my topic discussion, as I call them. And yeah, the sort of hobby grew from there. Eventually, I was offered, digital review copies of Agricola, I think was one of them. Can't remember the other one, the first two games. And then, bought more games, reviewed more games, and have been having a weekly games group for many, many years now. Probably, well, older than our daughter, so probably 15, 16, 17, 18 years now, if not more. So that's how that came about. Being reintroduced, thanks to Tom.
And it feels like you're using these games, Citadels, it's got that little bits of subterfuge. I always found Citadels an interesting one because it's very much a game that rewards familiarity with it. Yeah. I would argue that it is a teeny bit inaccessible in that you've got to wait for everyone to draft. If you've got a couple of people who've not played the game before, then and unaware of what rules there are, it's a lot to internalize. But once you have, the game really grows with you. Yeah. And there's so many layers. It gets into what Richard Garfield's like to call donkey space, I think. I don't know if that was a Richard term or a game theory term, where, okay, we are doing things that can beat the other person, but then if they change, then they will beat me, and then you kind of keep switching just based on the other person. So there's no clear optimal move because of the great interaction between the individuals.
Indeed, yeah. No, I love that. As you say, it's one of those games that takes a little while to get used to, but once you do, it really flows and it works really well. And again, it's an ideal game if you have a regular games group, as you say. So you are learning together. And you growing together. It's obviously a lot more difficult, I think, if you're introducing someone new to it. I mean, you can do it, of course, but it's nice that was one of the games that we sort of all learned together and almost grew up with, if you like. So it's a perfect game for that. So good choice. Again, thanks, Tom. And then obviously Lords of Waterdeep is the next thing that's sort of introducing worker placement. So again, Tom was choosing games to introduce more and more mechanisms over time to us. Of modern board games, and again, that's one of those games. The setting is very interesting. I'm not a D&D person myself, but obviously, if you have that background, but even without it, it's quite nice. And then you have the worker placement, you have your quests that you're trying to complete, your resource management, and then you have a bit of trying to block people and all that. So there's player interaction as well. So that was the next step in. So it was another game that's I would highly recommend if you're relatively new to the hobby. It's a relatively good starter game. And we actually introduced to our daughter as well when she was, I'd probably say 8 or 9 or something. So we introduced that to her and she picked it up quite quickly. Yeah, there you go. It's relatively straightforward to learn and play as well because, it's good fun. Oh, you're mute.
Sorry, thank you. Things like The Board Game Designer by Justin Gary, which is possibly, it's definitely up there as one of my favorite podcasts about board game design because it chats about the way that things are made, it gives you some actionable lessons, and it has just enough information about the designer, about the person that they're bringing onto the show to contextualize everything. So it's not about the designer as a person, it's not about their games, but it really nails down into the nitty-gritty. And I just realized that that's a phrase that I heard was problematic, so I'll try and avoid that. But, so Lords of Waterdeep, talking about how, it's this action drafting game. Some people might call it worker placement, which is you're putting down these things. And what's really interesting in here is that there is a little bit of a more engaging theme, because even though I feel like it's not that thematic, there's not that much going on, and for my money, I feel like Agricola is actually a stronger theme, because for me, Agricola, that sustenance farming actually comes through. I'm trying to do this, and yeah, sure, it doesn't quite make sense. Why do you go here and get the fish? Why do you go here and get some reeds that's randomly laid around? It doesn't make narrative sense, but at the same time, it's
more
feels
direct,
like,
isn't it? Yeah.
It feels like you're struggling, and that struggle kind of captures the struggle of sustenance farming a wee bit. But for sure, Lords of Waterdeep, I think, brought it to a lot more people, just because Dungeons and Dragons, that whole espionage, there's just a little bit of something that you can get into.
Yeah, it's more of a world than, I suppose, a specific theme as such. And as I say, you can sort of read the quest cards and think, oh, that's what's happening, and the Harpers are doing that, and you sort of you can sort of create your own story. It's almost like it's not a storytelling game, obviously, but you could create your own little stories by depending on the cards you're playing, the intrigues you're playing, the quests you're playing, and all that. So yeah. And then why the players to go? Bye.
Bye, and thank you very much. You're always welcome. You don't never feel like you need to stay for the whole thing. Lots of love, and have a lovely day. And I agree with what Adam's saying, that the fact that, you get these people along the course of the game is really interesting. So you have that sense of progression, you have that sense of growth, of greater power, but you don't have the opportunity to get scuppered, which I think is a really good design choice that they made. I think you're right there, Adam. And Hal tells us that Donkey Ace is possibly coined by Frank Lance. So if you want to check that out, I'm sure there's a Wikipedia page all about it.
Thank you.
But so we talked about these two games from Tom, Citadel's Lords of Waterdeep. Then was there a third or fourth like that really got you into?
Yeah, so I think in those days we played all of those games quite a lot, which is great, and I think that's why having a games group is great, that you can play the same game over and over rather than move from one to the next to the next. But yeah, there was a progression. I can't remember how we then moved on, what the next was, but over time, obviously, we found more games. I think before we even moved back, home, if you like, while we're still in the pub, I think I bought a copy of Gloom, because that was quite practical. Plastic cards in the pub, if you get spillage on there, it's not much of an issue. Small footprint and all that. It was a bit too dark actually to play in a pub. We needed more light, so that was the only problem with Gloom. So very apt title there. But yeah, we then got more and more games. I can't remember how we progressed, but we then started meetings weekly at one of our houses, places, wherever. But a lot of the driving force was Tom to start with, and it was really just us when we started buying stuff. But I might have bought games that I sort of looked exciting, but didn't really know much about them, and they weren't a good fit. And I think these things happen. But again, you learn as a group, and you have to also get used to what each other likes. And I think that's another reason why I like having a games group and playing with my wife and daughter and all that. You sort of do need to think about what sort of games they will enjoy as well, so you can actually play them together rather than buy a game that you really enjoy. And that can be quite tricky, trying to work out why a game works. And in some games, I love that you play with different people. So like with our games groups, it tends to be quite competitive. Someone wants to win, whereas with my wife and daughter, it's more like, I'm just going to play. I don't really care about winning. So cooperative games tend to be better with the family, but some games that are really competitive, we just play less competitively. I mean, my wife and I
sometimes you might play Ticket to Ride, but you don't focus on blocking the other person's things.
You just want to have a long route, or you really want to go a certain place or whatever. Like with my wife playing Wingspan, to me that's a good example. We play about getting nice birds into the area. We're not worried about what the other person necessarily has, and maybe getting rid of the birds that they might benefit from or whatever. We just play because we want to have that bird in our aviary. That's what we do. We play multiplayer solitaire, as they call it. Whereas again with the games group, it's more about, okay, I need to get this bird because that would benefit this person more. Even though there's not a huge amount of player interaction in Wingspan, but you can play it a bit more, competitively if you like, and it's a different experience. To me, just as enjoyable, because I do enjoy both sides of it. But to me, it's an ideal game that people can play in different ways depending on their attitude to gameplay, and it's relatively easy to learn as well. Given how much is actually happening in that game, I felt that it sort of flows relatively automatically as you play. You learn really. It's like, if I need this bird, I need this type of food. Okay, where do I get this food from? From the bird feeder. Okay, so you just don't have to think far ahead. You just go, right, this is what I need now, so this is what I'm going to do. And then I need eggs to lay, get the next bird out, so I need to lay eggs and so on. So yeah, that's how that works.
And I'm just doing a wee bit of
a bit more stretching of it. Okay.
Because Stream Elements reminds us to go side to side.
Thank you.
But
everyone join in at home, please.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting discussion about being mean, and Reiner Knizia always says, well, it's not that you have to be too fussed about who actually wins.
Yeah.
It's creaking while stretching. It's all good. Just exercise your body.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes, despite what Knizia says, that in Knizia's mind, I think you have to undergo this social contract to try and win the game. Because for sure, if someone was just playing randomly, let's use an extreme example. If someone was literally just making random moves and I was strategizing, I would feel quite disappointed, because unless, I guess, they're a grandmaster and then they're playing randomly for the first half of the game and then seeing if they can get out of it in the second half, that might be some. But we need to have similarly aligned expectations. There needs to be this, whether it's unwritten or unsaid. Sometimes it's better even to have it be spoken. Sometimes just get it out there. And I would like to ask you, I'm sure that there's a blog that you've done about this. I don't think I've heard one, but there might be one that I've missed or read one where you talk about making sure that expectations are aligned as you step into this magic circle, making sure that everyone is on that same degree of friendliness. Because do I, in a 2-player game, deny my opponent 5 points, even though it might cost me a point, when the alternative is to just get myself 2 points? Well, if I'm thinking about it in a 2-player game, losing 1 point in order to make you lose 5 points is clearly the superior move, because there's a 4-point differential. I go 4 points above you, whereas the other way, I only go 2 points ahead of you. But at the same time, it can feel like a completely different. Yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't think I've done a piece. I'm actually going to make a note now to write about it, so thanks very much. I'm going to use the afternoon to write a few articles to get ahead. I must actually pick up on you whether it is important that everyone tries to win. So I'm thinking of something like Carcassonne. And I've played it with my parents-in-law, and I'm not saying that they're playing completely randomly, because you can't, because you have to place a tile there, and chances are you're going to put the meeple on the road or the city if you can. So it is quite formulaic. But I think some people play it because they want to fill that last gap. If they find that perfect piece that fills that hole, they place it there, even if it doesn't give them the points they could have gotten somewhere else. So not playing to win that way. But I think, as I say, it's more about the meeting the expectations. If everyone knows we're just playing to create a beautiful map, then so be it. And one of us will win, and that's great, but we don't really care so much. We might still score it, or might not even score it in the first place. So it's not necessarily about aiming to win, but it's meeting that expectation. So, okay, this is what we expect from it. And obviously, if you play with people you don't know, there is sort of, I guess, there's sort of unwritten contract, because, when you play a game that's competitive, then you want to win it. Even if you play cooperatively, you play together to win the game. So I think that's sort of the unwritten that everyone should expect. But if you don't want to do that, then just say so in advance. But again, with the games group, we're playing usually competitively. And then we have someone in the games group, I think, who prefers the multiplayer solitaire. He doesn't like to play interaction. He still wants to win, but he doesn't like to play interaction. So whenever we have games where there is someone, we start all sort of beating on him, really, because he's usually quite good at some games. Once he gets the game, he can think like 10 steps ahead, like a chess player, and he usually wins. So even if like 2 of us play against him, if you like, he still then usually wins, but he complains because of that player interaction. He just wants to do his own thing, and if he wins, great, but he's not necessarily about winning, but it's just achieving that thing for himself. So it is about that, trying to understand what you're trying to get out of the game, and that's why these sort of party games, as we call them, are probably more about, okay, it's winning doesn't usually matter, scores usually don't matter, it's just I have a bit of a laugh, I have a bit of fun, and we're interacting together, and that's the type of game. But even those serious games, which I think is a terrible term, but even those you can play just for fun. Why not? Scores are good, but Carcassonne is my favorite example. The amount of times people just play to make a beautiful map and fill that last space. And why not?
I think, as you say, it has to be aligned.
Yeah.
You are... And I guess this gets into what a game is, because is an RPG a game? Because if an RPG is a game, then for sure, playing Dungeons and Dragons in order to win, especially if you are the dungeon master, that's a terrible experience for everyone else. That's just going to be horrible. And especially with a Nordic LARP, the concept of winning isn't even a thing. It's not as if you have a clear player versus environment or player against player type thing. But I would say that if I were playing Carcassonne, and if I were unfamiliar with this and someone were to put down a piece that offers them absolutely no advantage, I would feel almost slighted. I would feel like they are denying me the opportunity I come to Carcassonne expecting to negotiate a space, and then we're striving to get points, and we're making some effort to get points, and at the end there's some sort of comparison. And very clearly an ortho game, as Richard Garfield defines it, where there's multiple players and the players are ranked. Now that is a very specific kind of game. And if at the start the people don't want to play a game where it's all about the ranking of the players, well then maybe you can say, okay, we'll put things down, and okay, I could possibly get into that, but I don't know, like, are there better games for what you're trying to do if you're trying to just... enjoy making a map? I don't know.
Well, that's interesting though, because we're talking about almost creating house rule. When I play with my wife and her parents, we're probably playing it almost cooperatively. So we're creating our little house rule of, we just want to create a beautiful map, even though probably me and my father-in-law will probably play it more competitively. But ultimately, I don't expect necessarily my wife and my mother-in-law to make the most optimal moves. I expect them to probably create the most beautiful map, the most complete one. And you're right, yes, there probably are games out there that do that better. But why can't you make a game that you enjoy with people in different ways? Adjust that game so that it is fun with the people you're playing with at that point. Otherwise, you have to go out and buy a new game, and then maybe that doesn't quite fit. So I don't think there's necessarily a problem with making it, but absolutely there's a problem if one of you expects to win and it's all very competitive and the rest of you don't, then that person will probably have a bad experience. So let's make that clear at the beginning, and we have to sort of go from what the game is trying to do, and then if you want to play it differently, maybe you should say that, unless you obviously know it in advance. But so you can't. I'm saying that you can't play a game that's definitely competitive and really cutthroat, and then go, "Oh, we're going to play it cooperatively." Oh no, I didn't expect that. You should have said that at the beginning.
There's a question for me, which is, do I want to map out every single move? I'm not saying that I want to spend as long as it takes to work out the optimal move. I'm not going to take minutes over my move. I like to believe that I play quite quickly. I am going to be mindful of the other people, the time that it takes. But what I am saying is that if I play Carcassonne and someone just puts down a city tile and finishes my city and gives me some points, and there's no benefit for them, I would feel like, okay, if I win, then it's not because I did well. And suddenly, I guess there's that sudden realization that it's not what I signed up for. I would say that look, I am very happy to play Carcassonne and say we're going to spend, on average, 10 seconds, no more, putting down a tile and just play by your gut. That I'm happy with that. Maybe they're playing a meta game of bluff and rope-a-dope. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a thing. What I will say is that with Carcassonne, if we wanted to play a thing, I would be down for house ruling it and saying, okay, let's actually design the rules for what's our intended experience. Maybe we want to say, okay, let's just play the game and try to get how big a city can we get, how big of whatever we've deemed to be the most beautiful city. Or maybe we say we are playing cooperatively and let's try and get the highest minimum score. So we're trying to get the person with the lowest score to be as high as possible, and that is the group score. That would be a way to do it. That's often a way to turn a competitive game into a cooperative game. Highest, lowest score used to, and then I would be down for that, and then we're all helping each other.
So you got your designer hat on. I think that's the difference, because I'm not a designer. I probably don't have that hat on, and I'm just trying to create an experience that we all enjoy. I mean, not necessarily with the games group, because I just want to win. But no, I mean, it is ultimately about, and what Rob's saying here is, Rob Harper, is that, you know, you as long as everyone agrees, because otherwise we can also talk about kingmaking and those sort of situations where, okay, I cannot win, but depending on what decision I make now, someone will get more points than the other person. And is that good, bad, whatever? Again, if that's the game and that everyone is happy with that, how it works, then you know, let's enjoy it that way. But it does say it all comes about expectations. If your satisfaction, you know, that the satisfaction you get out of playing the game is to get the most points because you played well, not because people help you, then yeah, that's different. But I think in a lot of games there will be some sort of helping, or someone not making the best decisions they could have done, not necessarily realizing until later in the game. And they have helped you indirectly. So I think it's a bit of a gray area. But yeah, the extreme examples of, okay, someone gives you points by completing your city when they could have maybe completed their own. Okay, I get that. But again, if that makes a beautiful city, you know, creates a heart city, why not? You know, it looks nice. So it depends, as I say. It just depends on what people want to get out of it. So
I guess I would just be, I guess it all comes down to communication at the start. Yeah. And that's the thing. As you say, if I go into that, maybe I am almost certainly on the autistic. I have some autistic tendencies, and I have a great need to know when things are finishing. I have to kind of have some, okay, if I want to extend it, we can play again, or if I'm going to an event, I want to know that I'm able to leave at a certain point if I'm not enjoying it. That I might change my plans, but at least I've got a plan to start off with. And not having a plan does make me uncomfortable. So maybe I have a greater requirement for everything to be spelled out than a lot of people.
Maybe, but sorry. Again, going back to Carcassonne, playing with my wife and mother-in-law, they want that complete. They hate it when there's a gap. So I can't think of what, but there's some games where you sort of have to leave a gap to, you know, to play it, and they just hate that moment. So like in Carcassonne, the thing, I've got that tile that fills that one hole that only this tile completes. I am going to put it there, even if it means someone else gets points. So and that's their requirement. And so as I say, I think everyone has different expectations, and it is about this communication. You know, if you know the people, then obviously you don't need to have the communication problems.
If
you all know what to expect.
If I were playing with you and your wife, maybe I would just be like, okay, in this game, if there is only one tile left that can fill a hole and you hold that tile, you must fill that hole. And okay, I understand the rules, and there we go. Now we've spelled it out. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Yeah. And I'm not against house ruling games. No. I am very happy for people to, I think that's one of the great things about games, that we are able to tinker with them. Because let's say you want to start a game with twice as much life. Let's say you want to have the objective be twice as long. I know that Xate plays a version of Steamworks where you've got twice as many pieces, which might not be good for a starting player because it might make it, but it works for, you know, two people, at least two people in the world. And it's great that things can be modified so easily. And it's not like a video game where if you wanted to say, okay, everyone is able to jump twice as much, you can't change that in a video game, but if you want to say, hey, everyone moves twice as much, why not? Give it a go. And if that's what makes the game fun for you, so be it. But it has to be for everyone, not just a few people at the table.
Exactly.
I guess that's my thing. And if someone new is coming in, be mindful. Anyway, I feel like we're getting into Watch Bez rants about the thing which wasn't even to be a rant.
We're going off topic. It's okay.
I
like
it. We've got some people talking about Just One. I agree, Just One is a brilliant game. I would actually put that quite possibly. Did I put that into my top 10? Because I made a top 10 a while back. But say it could easily be in my top 10. And I do not believe that cooperative games are necessarily superior to competitive games as a party game. But for sure, having that option is wonderful. And I think it's lovely. Have you played this one?
I haven't, and again, I don't really have much opportunity to play party games, I think. But it would be one of those. I mean, what I've heard about it and what I've seen, I think it would be a really good party game, definitely. And yeah, again, make it whatever works for you, for your group at the time.
And I just want to say, yes, Alex, I 100% agree. From a design point of view, it feels better to gain points than make people lose points. But my hypothetical example, and this was quite a bit ago, was, in the game, if those are your two options, and you've already agreed to play that game. And yeah, Wavelength, another great game. I would actually possibly put Wavelength a wee bit higher. But another lovely cooperative game. I think it shines Wavelength at lower player counts, whereas I'm not so much a fan of Wavelength as a team game, because cooperatively, the nice thing there is everyone is engaged at once. You can have that nice discussion. And Rob says, most party games have a way of scoring, but in practice, groups generally don't worry about the points and just play as long as they like.
Very true, very true.
I think that is definitely true. It's, interesting how for sure. But the scoring, I think, is important, that the scoring leads you to do the fun thing. Because ideally, the way to score the most points and the way to do a fun thing should be aligned. Anyway, Oliver's Occasionally Observant Opinions is a show that allows guests to rant.
I have to start that. Is this a suggestion?
I think people are just renaming the show. This is no longer the Bezzy Beats and Board Game Bladder. This is the Oliver's Often Observant.
I'll take over now. Let's change the background.
Okay. So let's get into blogging. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that you fell in love with these games so hard that you wanted to share your opinions with the world. And now you're blogging like how many times a week? And they're actually really nicely written and edited. These aren't just, writing through. It's like, you've got a bit of a structure with your reviews. Okay, a little bit of fluff, which I can take it or leave it. But and
the intro,
it gets a nice. It kind of brings a little bit of personality to it, and it feels like very much something that, I would encourage everyone to check it out. I'm going to paste it in Twitch again, but tell us about that decision to start this.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for all that praise. I really appreciate that, because you don't hear a lot, unfortunately. You do feel sometimes like you're talking into the void. And as I say, I'm doing this as a hobby because I enjoy doing it. So I'm not doing it for the praise. But yeah, when I got into the hobby, I was combining my love of writing with the board game hobby. And as I say, I never intended to make reviews. So to start with, I released one article a week, which was just talking about something I had in my mind that was board game related. I think one of the first ones was probably food at the table, the classic topic of, are we allowed to have that, or what are the rules? And then, as I say, I was offered some digital codes for Steam games, and asked, do you want to review it? And I said, well, I've never reviewed. Let's give it a go. I always thought this is something I might try and see how it goes. And just, again, I think just starting the blog was more about let's see where this goes. It might not go anywhere, but I enjoy doing it, and I'm still enjoying doing it, and that was the main thing. So this is my hobby. This is what I love doing, just the writing of it, and then obviously now recording and stuff. But yeah, so then reviews started. So I then got up to basically 2 articles a week, which I haven't missed since I started that either. I'm very proud to say, even though there have been quite difficult times sometimes, but I need that schedule. So yeah, on a Tuesday, I release my topic discussion, as I call it, so my thought piece, if you like, and on a Saturday, there is a type of review. I've been doing obviously a lot more digital reviews recently, which I know is controversial. Some people say, oh, well, can you really review a game that's digital? And I'm saying, yes, I can, because I'm reviewing the game experience, which I know is different, obviously, in a digital format than on a board game. But I can still, talk about, as long as I make that clear at the beginning that I'm talking just about the digital version and I don't maybe have a physical, even though for quite a few games I actually have a physical copy as well, so I can talk about the components.
And you've given them their own title now, Digital Eyes?
Yeah, so Digital Eyes is my sort of digital reviews, and then my Saturday review is obviously on a Saturday. And then I've also done the odd take-backs review, which is basically a re-review. So certain games that are a bit more complex, like Scythe, for example, I think I did a take back where I basically had been playing it a lot more between the original review and now, and so, well, let's just look at it, whether I've changed my opinion. Has things has the game changed for me in any way? So I'm doing that now and again for some of the others, but it's basically always 2 articles, so a type of review, whether it's a digital or a physical review, or whether it's a take back on a Saturday, and then the thought piece on a Tuesday. And then I say for a while now, I've been recording all of these as well in audio format, so they're on the podcast as well. So all your favorite podcast catchers will have that somewhere. So if you don't like reading or don't have time or whatever, or if you don't like using your screen reader, if you have a visual impairment or whatever, then these podcasts are a way of consuming those articles that way. And I think I've sort of changed the style of that. My approach with a lot of the reviews and then also my podcast was more of a sort of cinematic type approach. So a lot of them had background music, which probably was sometimes a bit too loud, and you can really clearly hear me. I've got less and less music now, I think, in my audio versions. But that's why my reviews still tend to have a sort of story intro, if you like, where I'm trying to sort of set the scene of what the game might feel like, the setting of the game, wherever possible, and then lead into the title. So yes, it's a bit of fluff, but I think it just.
Sometimes with the less thematic games, it feels
it's hard.
It can feel like you're trying a bit.
Yes, no, absolutely, I get that, but I will still do that. It's just a bit of fun, and you get a bit of an intro, and if you don't like it, just basically skip the first paragraph every time, and it'll be fine. And then I've recently started the Let Me Illustrate series as well, putting the spotlight on board game artists, as I call it. And that it used to come out every 2 weeks on a Wednesday. I haven't had any more submissions for a while. There's one in the making at the moment, so I'm not guaranteeing a schedule for that, but that was the aim, every 2 weeks on a Wednesday. And that is also then transcribed into written version. So, again, if you want to read it rather than listen to it, for this, obviously makes more sense to actually listen to the artist in their own voice, because that's the whole point of this. That there's basically 17 questions that the artist answers, and the 17 questions are the same for everyone, but you never hear the questions, you only hear the answer. So it's something like, my name is la la la. I started, as a board game illustrator, la la la. So the beginning of the sentence basically tells you what the question is that it's answering. And the idea is that basically my voice is just at the beginning, at the end, obviously to wrap that round. But the whole episode is about them and their experience and what the challenges are about illustrating games. And I keep saying illustrating. I'm actually looking for artists generally, not just illustrators. So sculptors, graphic designers, anything that's sort of visual art in that sense. So if there are any visual board game artists out there, even if you've only done one game so far that maybe hasn't even been published yet, do get in touch. Go on the website. There's a link on there to Let Me Illustrate. I'd love to have you on there. And it's pre-recorded, so it's not live. So you can record in your own time. You can record it separately. I'll edit it all together, whatever works best for you. And then whenever you're ready, send it over, and as I put a web page on there as well with like your photo and some illustrations or some examples of your artwork, and then a transcript of it as well with a little bio at the beginning. And yeah, that seems to keep me busy most of the time, on top of obviously the Tabletop Inquisition podcast as well. So I do with the lovely Antoinette.
There's a lot going on, and we've got a lot of people talking about, how much they're enjoying the writings, how much they're enjoying the introductions, and just listening, which brings me to something that we were talking about at the start. And I did reach out to Oliver, and then because it was during this, I'm not going to lie, during this year, I've maybe felt a little bit, it's weird because I do this long 2-hour thing where I'm just able to ramble, but because there's so much of it, because I don't expect anyone to necessarily listen to every minute that I've ever recorded and put out there, I feel a bit less pressure. But then what I was thinking this morning was that I could actually go the other way and write it out first and then share the writing and then read it out after, because maybe that would be a way to, because I would definitely like to get involved, but it's just me getting that energy.
The offer is there whenever you're ready. There's no rush.
Thank you very much.
Talking about actually the audio version as well. I mean, when I first did that, I didn't actually think about people listening to podcasts specifically, on their commute or whatever it was in those days. Not that many people now commute, maybe starting again, I don't know. But it was more about actually making it more accessible. And we were talking about this before the show started. I was got in touch with Sarah Reed. Hello, shout out over there. And her husband is I think legally blind, but certainly obviously visually impaired. And I thought, well, yeah, if I could read these out, it's written. I literally just need to read it out, edit it, and publish it. And then these people don't have to use a screen reader, even though I sort of subsequently found that some people find it just easier to, if they're browsing the web, use a screen reader anyway. But at least that option is there. And then, as I say, sort of on the flip side of it, it was people saying, oh, actually, it's great because I can listen to you on, while I drive to work or whatever it is, in the car or wherever they are, or while they cook, I don't know, wherever. I tend to listen to podcasts while I'm cooking. And yeah, that was where it started, really just making it more accessible. And that's, again, why the Let Me Illustrate, I'm doing the other way around, where I have the audio recorded and I transcribe it to make sure that if people can't hear the artist, that they can read what they have to say as well. So that was the original driver, but obviously, like with all these things, making more accessible to a specific group makes more accessible to everyone. So that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, and I 100%, I love the fact that you're doing this. And I want to say, we'll talk about Tabletop Inquisition, because Board Game Inquisition is Antoinette's thing. It's it feels like back in those days, I mean, Tabletop Games blog, and it just was available. Why not go for it? Because it's a good name. And
that was the history of it. It's like, well, I'm not going to call it, I'm not going to come up with another. Well, I have to be careful now because there's so many podcasts and blogs out there that use specific terms from our board game hobby and try and put a spin on it, which is great. I mean, some of them are fantastic names, but I thought I'm not going to try and make another pun. I'm going to just call it what it is, Tabletop Games blog. And then I have the option open, because I wasn't going for reviews, so it wasn't going to be the Meeple review or the cardboard review or whatever it may be. I thought, well, I'm going to call it just Tabletop Games.
And maybe at some points you'll do games that aren't even cardboard. Like maybe some of the games might be plastic. Yeah.
The problem with the name is that I don't actually play tabletop war games and things like that, so miniature games. And I have been, people have been in touch and said, oh, we're doing this new war game. Do you want to, review it? And I'm going, I don't really know enough about it. I could give it a go, but I don't know how well I would review it. I'm probably the wrong person. So name tabletop there is probably a bit too broad and going in the other direction. But yeah, that was the idea. Just keep it quite generic. And so, well, I don't know where this journey is going to take me. At least I have the option now to go wherever it goes. And it was available, as I say, as well, as a website address.
I just want to point out, and everyone in the comments, please feel free to tell me if you can think of anything similar, because the writing, when you write, it is very easy to edit. I'm not saying that it doesn't take time. But it's easier than editing audio, let alone video, right?
Absolutely.
I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, having this nicely written, edited, curated piece of text, and then turning that into spoken dialogue and injecting it with your own personality, your own nuances in timing and speech as you go through it, I think that's something that I've not seen anywhere else. Oh, actually, I just thought of something. 5 Games for Doomsday. Ben Maddox does occasionally have a written thing that they've read out loud. But that's a very small part of that show. That's a very occasional thing. I can't think of anyone else in the board game space who does anything similar, which is incredibly curated. And as a result, it comes across as you do manage to keep a little bits of the humanity and the personality there. Look, I'm not here to just big you up, but you're going to listen and take my compliments. You do have a little bit of, you have developed your own voice, and I think that's brilliant. But there's no long rambles. Like, if you watch this show, you know that's okay, Bez is going to go on a tangent. Sometimes I will say, sometimes there will be a bit of a gap and it's slightly awkward, but that lends it a delivery, a consistency of flow. It feels like, honestly, that is one of the very, it feels like almost like the audio version of 3-minute board games. Like, it's incredibly respectful of your time. And I think that, I would love to see more of this, where more people actually write out what they're going to say and script it. And I say this as someone who's never done this, and I'm aware of how much work it takes, but I think it's just phenomenal. So I just want to give you a wee bit of applause. And so if everyone can chuck in some love hearts for Oliver in the chat, please.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that means a lot. No, thank you very much. I mean, I'm glad it comes across as you know, have a bit of a human factor in there, because it is actually quite hard to read out your own written words and still sound, you know, natural, if you like. So I'm a huge respect to all voice actors, all these people who do that sort of work, because it is tough, because you end up just reading and you don't really know what you're saying, and then you have to think, well, hang on, actually I need to read with a certain emphasis. So I'm glad it comes across as quite sort of natural and the human factor. And the brevity, I mean, that was the other reason. I mean, partly it was due to having only so much time. I don't have time to write, well, I suppose I could have time to write a huge long article, but there would probably be less. But I was more focused on this sort of regular schedule. Once a week I do something, or now twice a week, because that sort of kept me, I think, again, I was mentioning that in the Tabletop Inquisition podcast episode recently, that it allowed me to have something to focus on, and that was probably more of a mental thing, because it is pressure, but I know that if I don't do that, I probably would never finish anything, because especially with writing, or probably any sort of creative work, actually, you'll never finish it if you just keep going. If you don't have a deadline, you just keep going and you edit it some more and you do it more. Whereas with this, it's like, okay, I need to have another article ready for next week, let's do this, and then now get it edited. And that's why they're probably quite short, because I had to obviously fit that into the weekly schedule. I could switch to like a maybe monthly thing and then have a longer piece, but exactly, thank you. So you comparing me with Jay from 3-Minute Board Games is a huge honor, because he does amazing work with the videos. I'm in huge awe with that, because again, as we said at the beginning, video work is so much more time consuming. You know, writing an article is one thing. Doing the audio version is maybe 3, 4, 5 times as long as the article sort of takes to read. And then doing video work is probably another 10, 20 times as long as that. So, you know, for a 3-minute video, I don't know how many hours he spends getting it all together, from filming to editing to publishing and all that. So, yeah, so it's a format that works for me. That's why I did it. But I'm glad that it works for other people as well. And the brevity is appreciated. And it's not too short, hopefully.
Oh, I just inspired by you. I tried a similar but different title, and it is available. I am very tempted. I'm not going to say the thing just in case.
Someone else registers it.
Yeah, because I know there's a couple of trolls in here, and I just can't be. But no,
Go for it.
I am thinking about. Okay, I'm not going to say anything more than that. But anyway, let's talk about writing. Let's talk about you got involved with There Will Be Games. You got involved with Tabletop Spirit digital magazine. How were those experiences?
That was good. Actually, there's another one, UK Gaming Network, which is sort of starting to wind down now, unfortunately. So I've taken it off my website. I think they just don't have the time to do it, and it's understandable. But yeah, I mean, that was actually them approaching me, which again was a huge honor. I mean, There Will Be Games, lots of great names on there, and being able to add my articles there. So I'm not specifically writing for them. It is literally just my normal articles that you would see on my blog appear on there as well. It's just a way of basically spreading the news, if you like. And yeah, just being contacted by them and being seen as worthy, if you like, because as I said earlier, I'm just doing it as a hobby. I don't know how well it works or doesn't work for other people. So when someone contacts you and say, oh, do you want to add your articles to our website as well? You know, they'll be yours forever. It's great. So, you know, it didn't take me any extra time to do that. Just, you know, add them in there. And that's great. And then, you know, Tabletop Spirit, there were specific articles that I was asked to write as well, because it was, you know, certain topics that obviously were picked up for my blog, and was an opportunity for me to expand on those. So the brevity of the blog can be good, obviously, for consuming it, but some topics do need a bit longer. So I sometimes feel I'm not necessarily spending enough time on it. So that was an opportunity to write for longer. And as I say, that was amazing to have that outlet and being able to, you know, write a slightly longer piece. I even was asked to write, well, actually, I asked, I think, them a piece for the UK Board Game Exhibition, UK Expo, for their catalogue for, I think, was it last year before? I don't know when the last one that did take place, but obviously that didn't happen, so the catalogue didn't go out. So having the opportunity to write longer pieces is actually really nice. I quite enjoy that. Having, you know, obviously it's a different approach because you do have to write differently for shorter pieces than for longer pieces. But that is great. Just, you know, being able to, as I say, being approached and being seen worthy, if you like, to do that is just amazing. So no, really appreciate that. And, you know, thank you very much for Shelley Rose approaching me from There Will Be Games to write for them. So yeah, huge honor.
I don't know. There's a lawnmower outside. Can you hear it on my end, by the way?
I can hear a little bit, but it's okay.
Okay, great.
Tiny bit.
I wanted to ask. I'm not going to ask, you know, exact amounts of money, but, you know, you've got a Patreon. But I want to ask, what's motivating you to do all this?
Right.
Why do you do this? You've said before we started recording that you're not wanting to turn this into some sort of career, but clearly you are, you know, very happy and grateful for the financial support. But what is it purely that you want to contribute to the gaming scene? Is it that you want to have your name out there? Is it that you are in desperate seek of validation from other people?
Well, I don't think it is. No, I mean, as I say, even if I had, say, looked at my stats for my blog and there was no one visiting the blog, I probably would still continue. I just enjoy it. I enjoy the process of writing it. I enjoy thinking my own thoughts through, you know, like my topic discussions, and also thinking more analytical maybe about games and see, okay, why is this so much fun? What is the experience we're getting out of it? And even like in our games nights, we just talk afterwards. Oh, you know, what did we enjoy about this? What worked? What didn't work? So I like that process, and I will do that. As I say, I think whatever happens, as long as I have the time, I'll do it. So the Patreon is more about, you know, paying for some of this hosting, paying some of the equipment, so the video work and stuff like that, and that's what that's about. You know, I'm obviously, if I sort of started earning like $1 million a month out of that, I could give up my day job and just do this. Of course, you know, we live in a commercial world, unfortunately, I suppose. But that's not the driver. You know, I'm not seeing this as a commercial opportunity. That's not what I'm I'm not pushing this. I'm not trying to get onto, shut up, sit down to get my name out there so I get, 10,000 followers, or, I'm not criticizing anyone who does that. If that's what you want to do, then that's great. It's just not for me. That's not what my driver is. So yeah, the commercial side of it isn't there. Patreon supporters are really appreciated. And as I keep saying on there as well, it is actually more about knowing that there are people who are interested. So if I had a daily stream of positive or even negative comments, I suppose, as long as they are constructive, I don't want hate mail, but anything that's a good comment on the blog, that probably is as valuable as having a Patreon supporter. But having those people saying, okay, I'm gonna give you whatever level, $10 a month for what you do because I believe in what you're doing, that means a huge amount. Someone saying, I'll give you $1, it means a huge amount. It's just, there's people there saying, yeah, I like what you do, carry on doing it. And that's what it's more about. So validating in that sense is obviously, I think everyone likes to know that what they're doing is a good thing. But as I say, even if no one was paying me any money and I had no visitors on the website, I probably would still write, as long as I can afford to pay for the hosting and whatever. Would carry on at the time.
But it sounds like it is that feedback and that validation. It can't help. We are all human, and having that gives you a bit more encouragement to keep going. Maybe you might say, okay, well, maybe you wouldn't do it as much. Maybe you would eventually fall out of love with it. I don't know.
I don't know what that would eventually. You never know what the future brings, but I don't think I'll fall out of it. It's more like a.
No, I meant hypothetically, if there was no one watching and literally no one visiting.
No, I would. I think I still would do it. It's, as I said, the Patreon's more about I can now afford to pay for the hosting, so that's not the cost I have to worry about. And the comments are more about, okay, am I actually saying the right things? Or am I, do I know what I'm talking about? Is it actually useful to anyone? And I think that's what it's about. But I say, even if there was nothing, I would still continue. I mean, after all, that's how I started the blog. I was probably a year before anything really happened with the blog properly, if you like, and I was still doing it. So I was, at that point, releasing one article a week, and eventually 2 articles a week. And there was, there wasn't really any comments. There was no Patreon supporters, and I was doing it because I enjoyed doing it. And I think I just love the creative process of writing these articles. That's the main driver. As I say, the podcast side is sort of almost secondary, and the video work is secondary. That's the writing that I enjoy doing. And yeah, maybe eventually I wouldn't write about board games, and maybe I'll go back to creative writing again and write a science fiction story instead. But I think that part of it will always be there. But yeah, of course, it's even better if people say that they enjoyed the article. And when you do sort of strike a chord with one of your articles, like I think Gavin was saying earlier with the thought pieces, they talk about something and people say, oh yeah, I completely agree, or I disagree even. You just hit something somewhere. Is a nice feeling because it sort of starts the conversation.
Your articles are never incendiary. Your articles are never provocative for the sake of being so. But what I believe they are is a nice galvanizing of thoughts. As I wrote somewhere, I often find myself nodding along and thinking, that makes a lot of sense. But having someone crystallize it and put it into those words, because there is, even if we have that belief, having that belief turn into a conscious thought gives it some power and allows us to act upon it a bit more readily. And the fact that we're like, okay, yes, now I'm not saying it will ever happen, but in the scenario where I do come to play Carcassonne with your household, I will know that there is a house rule that if you've got only one piece, and I guess for this house rule to work, you need to pay careful attention to all the pieces, and we're playing by base Carcassonne. If there's only one piece that can fit a hole, you've got to put it there. And you're not allowed to place, I guess the other part is you're not allowed to place anything that will create an unfillable hole, is the house rule.
Could be, yeah.
And that is totally fair. But having that, to my mind, communication, having that level of verbalization, it's the same reason why Jeff Engelstein and Isaac Shalev wrote Building Blocks of Tabletop Game Design, because having this language for designers allows designers to talk about this stuff more freely. And I'm aware of the time. I know I have to let you go at some point in the next few minutes.
I'm okay, actually. No, I was just going to say, I think it's, as you say, putting it into words makes it more powerful. And as I said before, I think it helped me originally just to formulate my thoughts better as well. That's what I say. That's sort of the original driver of this blog. What do I think about it? And once you write it down, it is a lot more formalized in a way. I mean, I'm not talking about any groundbreaking stuff. This is, food at the table has been discussed for decades. There's nothing groundbreaking. And yes, maybe it's very controversial, but I'm not going out to try and, start a war because over a topic. I don't like that. I want to bring all the views, if I can, bring all the views to the table, and let's talk about it. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is just formalize those thoughts and put them down on paper, and then that gives me more confidence as well that what I believe seems to make sense. And then, as I said, then the comments on top of that, someone disagrees, great, let's have a discussion. I might carry on to disagree afterwards, but at least I've considered some others' opinions and hopefully broadened my horizon that way. So yeah.
It almost feels like you're mediating something, because the amount of viewpoints that you bring into a single article, I'm not saying that you do that for your reviews. I mean, obviously the reviews, it's very much, this is my opinion, and there's never any sense of my opinion is right, but that's why you're listening. It's to hear what Oliver has to say. Whereas when it's the general, do you want food at the table or not, I believe that there's this consideration of every angle, and sometimes you don't come to a conclusion, but that's totally fair.
Yeah, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person, and that's fine. We're all different, and that's why there's so many board games as well, because we all like different board games at different times.
Jones also likes the way that you draw together and summarize views.
Thank you, Kevin.
Given that you've got a wee bit of time, I am going to first talk about your podcasting with Antoinette, which we're writing about down below, and then we'll talk a wee bit about being playtesting judge and coach.
Cool.
So,
yes.
Antoinette is lovely. Don't you think
she is. Yeah, she's wonderful. And it's thanks to her that this podcast exists, actually, because she contacted me. I mean, I was at the time thinking about doing some sort of podcast, because I always like the idea of maybe talking to people, whether it's in an interview format or something. And that's why I'm doing things like Let Me Illustrate, because I like to listen to what people have to say and try and share that with others if possible, and ask them questions. So I was thinking about it, just thought I'm not quite there yet. And then Antoinette contacted me and said, "Oh, like what you do you want to do a podcast?" almost. And that was it. That was the beginning of it. And the very first episode, if you listen to that, we're just talking about ourselves. We have our sort of catalog of questions, favorite color and all that sort of stuff, just to get to know each other. And then, it sort of evolved from there. So we're trying to publish an episode every month, even though I've been finding that quite hard recently. So the schedule used to be like first Monday or second Monday in a month we'll release it, but it's a bit more over the place at the moment. But that's sort of the aim, roughly. I mean, we're not sticking to it. Ultimately, we just want to have a good, podcast together. And a lot of them, we have a topic that we talk about and try and, like in my thought pieces, try and talk about it from different angles. And it's great, again, to see what Antoinette thinks about these things. And a lot of them are just chats. I mean, none of them are scripted. We do tend to have sort of questions prepared, just so we know roughly where we might want to go with this, in case the conversation runs dry, we've got something to cling on to. But most of the time, we just ignore most of those questions, just go with natural flow. And it's lovely. I mean, I didn't meet her in person until Essen, actually, and that was after the podcast had launched. So we've been only communicating via Twitter and email, and then obviously chatting on the podcast with each other. And it's just wonderful to hear about her. Over time, I think we've been talked about more who we are as people and what sort of challenges we face in our sort of lives, mental health and time and all those requirements. And it's just good fun. I mean, the latest episode is definitely just a chat. We literally just went from one to the other. But we also had interviews, so we had invited people to talk, from the industry, to talk about things. And again, we start with like our fun questions, a bit like you with your sort of quick questions, I suppose, just to ease the guest in as well. And then, yeah, we tend to talk about who they are. I mean, the last one was Nikita Sullivan from Attica Games, which is a pleasure to talk to because she designs, illustrates, publishes her games herself, and just she's a creative person. You can sort of tell anything she does is just making things, whether she's knitting dice
even
bags.
assembles them, which I do not do.
Absolutely. So when we talk self-publishing, it's not just getting the bits and having them packed from someone. She actually puts everything in the tin, or whatever it may be, box. I mean, the last one was the mint tin, and yeah, it's just nice to then have another third person to talk to, just having those chats, and that's what I really enjoyed doing that. And I was thinking about doing it myself, but doing it with Antoinette is even better. Even though obviously having two people interview one guest can be more difficult. So you do have a bit more of a plan of what we want to ask, because we might keep going off on different tangents. And we do try and take turns as well asking questions to keep it quite balanced if we can. But yeah, it's just nice to have a chat with someone, whether it's Antoinette and I, or whether we have the guest on the show. And yeah, we'll again keep doing that as long as we can do it, even if it's maybe not every month at the moment. I mean, it has been so far, so touch wood, hopefully it'll continue like that. And yeah, really enjoyed that. So if you haven't listened to that yet, tabletopinquisition.com is the podcast, where you can hear us both talking about all sorts of board game related things.
And yeah, it's a lovely thing, and I feel like the approach is quite similar to that which you take in your own blog, which is about, yes, there's a little bits of reviewing or talking about opinions of games, but it's very much about discussing the broader landscape. And I think this is the things that are interesting, those lessons of, hey, how can we mediate that magic circle and make sure that everyone's comfortable? Hey, how can, and those sorts of more generalized discussions. And
I mean, Antoinette is very sorry. Antoinette is very good as well, because she's got I think a philosophy degree, so she's very good at sort of formulating those thoughts into words as well, and I think that helps me sometimes work out actually what I'm trying to say, because she comes in with a question or she summarizes it, and it's a pleasure to work with her because of that. So again, she has the same sort of attitude, in her reviews. So check out her YouTube channel, Board Game Inquisition, or boardgameinquisition.com is a website, I think. And yeah, her reviews all about, okay, this is how the game works, and this is what I enjoyed about it, what don't I enjoy about it, but also, okay, this is who the game might be for, which is very important to her. So not about, okay, I like the game, don't like the game. This is more about, okay, who would enjoy the game, even if I don't like it? What are the sort of people who might enjoy it, for what reason? And that is really nice to see, to have that sort of side of the game, because a lot of reviews, even mine included, it's like, yeah, I enjoyed it or I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I hope people can work out whether it is for them from that. But Antoinette doing this extra bit of, okay, who is this game for, is the extra step that and she's found that some people have come back to her and say, I've just bought this game because of your video, and again, that's wonderful to see. So yeah, very nice person to work with. Sorry, I've interrupted you there.
No, it's all good. And yep, 100% agreed. Antoinette is lovely. Been on this show a couple of previous times. I can't remember which numbers, but if you go onto youtube.com/stuffmybez, and there's a little search bar where you can type in Antoinette, and Antoinette Mason is the only Antoinette I've ever had on. Yeah. So we chatted about what is a reviewer, and then we chatted about what makes for a good review, and we talked about the obligations of things, and it was really a fascinating discussion. Antoinette is, I think the American phrase is whip smart. And anyway, this is something that you're continuing to do. You'll probably continue to do for the foreseeable future. And let's talk about playtesting. So I had the pleasure of having you at my table to try out Seize the Power. You've been credited in some rule books, including, as is scrolling down below, Empires of the Void, Chai, and Coral Islands. And I would be interested to hear first, let's talk about the playtesting aspect first. How were those experiences? What makes a good playtesting experience from the perspective of a playtester?
Well, it depends on what the playtesting is. I think probably most of the playtesting I did is basically blind playtesting, where you basically given the game. Well, in this case was print and play, print out the rules, print out the components, cut them out, get them ready, and then play the game from those rules and feedback. And that obviously is a different experience because there's no designer or no one helping explaining things. The idea is that can you play the game and what do you get out of that? And I think I really enjoyed that because, I mean, generally with playtesting, I enjoy the part that you can actually feedback your thoughts. They may not be considered because that's not where the game should be going, and that's fine. But at least you have an opportunity to feedback and say, "Oh yeah, that's really good," or "That didn't work for me because," and have some, constructive feedback. So giving back to the hobby, because again, I'm thinking, well, I'm buying all these games, but someone's making these games. Let's help these people who make these games, so I get more games. It's almost selfish, if you like. But yeah, those were
It's
a lot
not
of
as
them.
if there aren't many games being made, like more good games per year than you could possibly play anyway.
True, that is true. And then I think one playtest session I had at UK Games Expo was of Coral Islands, I think. And that was obviously with someone there, so they explained the rules to us and sort of asked us to feedback as we were playing. And that was, again, a different experience. It's quite nice to sort of know from the start roughly what they want you to look for as well. I think I actually did an online playtest session recently. The title of the game I can't reveal at the moment, but it's a very interesting game. And again, there was someone there, not the designer, but someone there to sort of steer us a bit. And we were told, okay, these are sort of prototype components, so don't worry about the artwork and the quality and all that. We're thinking more about this. And having a bit of a steer is obviously useful, because otherwise you go, oh, that doesn't work for me. I hate this. If you're a very visual person, if the illustrations aren't there, you might not like the game, even though the game itself might be really good once the illustrations are in place. So having a bit of steer, I think, is important. And then, yeah, just being able to feedback. And sometimes, let's say, I think in the online version that we played of the game, afterwards they were saying, okay, so what I quite like is a lot of them, they're like a questionnaire afterwards. So, say, okay, out of 1 to 10, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Any other comments, etc., etc. But in this one, they were saying, okay, we were thinking about introducing a solo mode or a cooperative mode or something. What do you think about that? So getting these additional questions is good, again, because it gives an opportunity to feedback and say, okay, this is a really good game because, or this doesn't quite work for me. And then, hopefully if a lot of people sort of feel the same, they can incorporate that or not, whatever the decisions may be. And I quite like about, being able to have some, I mean, it sounds like I want to have influence, being a sort of power mad person here, but it's more about giving back to the community and seeing, like seize the power.
I don't think you're coming across that way
okay,
at all.
But like playing Seize the Power was an amazing event, and again, that's the sort of game I think you have to play in person. It doesn't really come across, I think, online, unfortunately. So hopefully that's part of the play testing. I think I talked about before. A lot of stuff going digital now has its advantages, but also has disadvantages, of course. And yeah, I wish I could do more of that. My problem at the moment is if it's a print and play, I just don't have the time anymore to print out stuff, cut it out, do it, and all that. Even though I did actually recently we play tested Ren Games' latest Pilfering Pandas, my wife and I. And I will still do it, but it's not as much as I used to be able to. I used to have a lot more time to do these things. And it's just nice also to be part of that journey, to see where the game started, and then eventually it comes out, and you think, oh yeah, I helped with this. Oh, this this is what I suggested. It's been implemented. Not that your own the only comment that you made was what's implemented, but it's just nice to see that journey and see the designers go through it, and especially with sort of first-time designers as well, helping them along, I think is great. That's why being part of that board game design workshop contest, being also coach for a design pair, was really nice to see them go through that and see whether I can help them anyway. Not that I'm an expert necessarily, but I certainly have an opinion on some things. So being able to look at that and be constructive, I think that's the ultimate thing with all playtesting. You have to have constructive criticism. I mean, it's great to say I don't like it, I don't know why, but it's even better if you can say I don't like it because of this and that, which can be hard. But yeah, so playtesting I love doing. So if there's a prototype that someone can send me, I'd probably happily playtest it, but I just don't have the time to assemble it anymore. Digital, possibly, digital playtests I'd still be up for doing, definitely.
That's a lot to unpack for sure.
Sorry.
No, never apologize. Firstly, I agree with digital playtesting, and I'm not sure if I was just taking the easy option when I said to ITB that no, I'm not going to playtest this digitally. I don't have the energy. Maybe it could work, but I just think it wouldn't be worth the time and effort, to be honest. Because the negotiation around the table, yes, you can negotiate, yes, you can type the messages, but that's not really testing the game, is it? Because what I want to test is how does that negotiation around the table work? That is a game about negotiation.
Absolutely.
I want to tap into a lot of more of what you're saying. I want to say a quick hello to Dina, who's just popped in. And who says, Oliver, lovely to see you. Bez,
Hi.
and thank you very much. And I'm glad that you're finished with editing pictures for social for today. If you want to share a link to the categorical picture, then please paste that in. And hello back, Alex. And oh, that's very kind. Whoop ha ha boom. Whoop ha whoop bam. So with playtesting, I suggested to Yoda to actually pop into your channel to mention this roll and write. It was technically a flip and write, this kind of print and play where you need to print a sheet, and you say you don't have time to assemble, but when it's one sheet, it's no assembly required. And I wanted to ask something like Alex did, or Yoda's kind of incorporated into a list of things, and then you click on one button and then it says, okay, first turn, that's what you got. Second turn, that's what you got. So you don't even need to get the cards together or roll the dice necessarily. Everyone's playing through the same. How do you feel about that approach?
Yeah, I think that could work. As I say, it's about time. So if I have to print off a piece of paper and get a pen, that's fine. And then if I can log on and it's all there. I mean, even if if the components are there, it's like I've got some dice at home, so with dice rolling, I'm happy to just add some dice from somewhere else and things like that, and some resources. It's more the sort of assembly, but no, definitely I'd be happy for that. My only thing at the moment is roll and rides. Unfortunately, aren't my cup of tea. I tried a few times and I haven't found one that works for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know.
That is fair, and I don't want to harsh anyone's buzz.
No.
But at the risk of what exactly is it that you don't like about them? And then let us ponder to see if there's one that you should try, that you might enjoy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just trying to think what it is. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but I just didn't get much enjoyment. I think there isn't much of satisfaction when you draw things on a map, I guess. Maybe I don't know why. Maybe I'm more of a tactile person and a visual person. Maybe I have to have tiles I'm placing. If it was a roll and write, but instead of writing you place tiles, maybe that appeals to me more. I don't know, because I have talking about Carcassonne, that's literally just you place a tile. You could probably do that as a roll and write if you wanted to. You could draw things. You got like the cartographer and things like that where you're drawing maps. So it is probably just the components that put me off, maybe. I don't know. So not necessarily gameplay as such, because some of them are really quite clever.
You've played the thematic ones. You've played the more involved. Have you played Welcome to Dino World?
Haven't played that one. I've played. Is it Quirkle or one of those? I've played some from. I can't remember. There's a few that were more thematic. I think they have to like raise Atlantis or something like that. And they're quite. I mean, the theme in some games is quite thin anyway, but it just didn't feel like you're doing what the theme was about. If you see what I mean. Even like a dino game where you're maybe building cages and you get dinosaurs and things. If you just do it on paper, I think it is literally just the components that I want to place fences and I want to grab a dino, a meeple, and put that somewhere. And I'm a very visual person, so I think that's possibly what it is that I just don't enjoy. And some of them are a bit like, okay, you have to cross that up over there, and then you can do that over here, and then I don't know, maybe some of them are just too complicated as well, where you have to just do too many things rather than roll a few dice. You know, the sort of Yahtzee approach, I don't have a problem with it. Roll a few dice and, you know, you can cross certain things off and, you know, put your top points in, whatever. When it becomes more complex, I guess I'd prefer the components. I think that's probably what it is. I don't really know. I should write about this. I should reanalyze this. Why I don't like roll and rides.
Write it down. You get 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
I actually played Draftosaurus a few times on Board Game Arena, and yeah, I can sort of see that, but I think that the drafting couldn't. Yeah, I mean, when you're drafting something, if you're actually drafting physical objects, at that point, you might as well use the physical objects.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Zena says they would love to read that, and so maybe this could be a more slightly new angle, because you've done a lot of general, this is a balanced view on this. Maybe you could do some, hey, this is Oliver's introspection. I don't think of a better. And why does Oliver not like roll and writes? And I think that's totally fair, that you just don't like the writing, you don't that doesn't appeal to your brain. You want those tactile things to put down, the 3D objects. You know, I mean, obviously you've got the 3D objects in your hand, but it's not the same. I get it. Anyway, I was going to say, beyond that, from a selfish point of view, and a quick thanks to Dina, and please, do go over and follow the new Categorical Instagram. I should note that there might be a small mistake here, because or just to clarify, Tom Cauldron is the designer of Categorical. I was the developer of Categorical, but there's going to be more pictures of graffiti and board games and all sorts of things. So please go and check that out.
Yes, please do.
But yes, from a selfish point of view, I want to know how best to motivate you to engage in a playtest. So firstly, we've heard make a game that you're interested in. I think that's a key thing. You don't, if you're playtesting as a designer, if I'm playtesting for reciprocation, I am going to playtest whatever's on the table. Even if you put down, and as a designer, I have to be willing to accept certain things. I have to be more ready to accept that's okay, we might just play one game, or one turn, and then the game will end, or one turn. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that when you're going to people who aren't designers, who are more the general public, you need to have your game in a state that you've got to the end of it a few times first. Like, you need to have that readiness. But secondly, if you are going to give your time, you're not doing it because you have to reciprocate, because you're a designer, you help them, they help you. It has to be a game that you enjoy. Beyond that, is there anything else that...
Well, even that is quite difficult, the game you enjoy. I think if you had a convention, for example, you know, trying to call people over and say, come on, playtest my game. Yeah, you can see it and you can sort of decide whether you want it. And again, it depends on the person. I mean, as I said, I'm a very visual person. So even though I don't mind if it's a piece of paper written on, I'm happy to play that. But of course, if it's more like a prototype stage where you see more things, then it probably is more enticing, I think, to a lot of people, because you can see roughly what the game might be doing just by looking at it. And I think it's time, a lot of it, the time as well, whether you're at a convention. I mean, obviously that's not happening at the moment, but even playing online at home or something, you have to obviously fit around people's lives and things. I think certainly for me, that is a lot of it. I mean, I've signed up for playtest sessions where I didn't know what game I was going to play. I was saying, right, I'm just going to spend an hour at this time of day on this day playing a game, and I'm going to learn it and all that. So that, I think that can be fine as well. I think for a lot of people, it is probably the time thing, because I think a lot of people in our hobby actually just want to try out a new game. We're all happy to just go, all right, let's just try this game that's not even out yet. Let's see what it's like. Maybe I can feed something back. And having that is, I think everyone would be happy, unless, as I say, it's really something that isn't for them. But then you wouldn't know neither the designer would know who to approach, nor the person approaching the playtest session would know what necessarily they're letting themselves in for. So having that there and making it, as I say, making it easy. I think the other thing is, quite often, I think a lot of people, and me included, can be quite daunted about learning a game. So going in with a group of people you don't know and sort of admitting, no, I didn't get this rule. You've explained to me 3 times. I still don't get it. You have to have a certain personality. So making them feel comfortable in that sense, saying, look, there's no right, no wrong, whatever it may be, making them feel comfortable that they can learn the game and we're all learning together. And as I say, obviously, you're probably approaching people who are quite social because they will be talking to other people that they've never met before, unless you get a group of people, but that's probably rarer, at whatever formats you're choosing. So that, I think, as I say, time is probably the biggest thing for a lot of people. And then just that sort of social aspect of, feel comfortable and ask questions. And, if you don't get it, it's fine. And again, sort of the time element, potentially saying, look, if you do want to interrupt it after 10 minutes because it just isn't for you, it's fine as well. We don't have to play it all the way through. I'm not going to make you sit there, It's a welcome thing, I think. And other than that, I really don't think there is much because, you ask any person who's into this hobby, they'll say, well, yeah, I'll try this game. Don't know what it is, but I'll happily try a new game. I think most of us will say that. Just trying something out new. Definitely.
That's definitely, a few things to consider.
Freebies are always nice as well, of course, but
Dina, freebies, yep. I guess.
No, I'm joking, but go on.
Actually, that bring. Firstly, Dina says, just to clarify, so you do alpha testing as well, and Jones. This seems like a complete tangent, but I couldn't help but address this. I would like a sort of X and rights where you produce a nice looking. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
In I like a blank and rights where at the end you've got something that actually looks good. So cartographers, which can't remember who worked on it, and welcome to Dino World, which was James, David, Nick, myself, and a bunch of other people. That was a big group effort. So I'm glad that you enjoyed those. And Thomas says, how does Oliver find bringing new playtesting to his gaming groups? Do you ever find yourself having to turn down games you'd know they wouldn't be keen on?
I mean, that's generally true for reviews and playtesting. I mean, at the moment, I'm just playtesting with my wife. So when I said yes to Janice from N Games about Pilfering Pandas, I had to have a rough idea of what that game was about, whether I would actually do it. Because I don't want to say, yeah, I'll playtest that, and then never do, because either I don't find the time or whatever. I want to have a rough idea. And I say that's the same, obviously, with review copies. I wouldn't accept the game if I don't know enough about it. Because I don't want to write a bad review. I mean, I'll happily do if it is a really bad game, but that's not the point of it. I don't want you to go out of your way to give me your time, basically, or your game or whatever.
And it's not enjoyable for you.
No, exactly. So
do you do the Rado thing where you ask the publisher to send you a rule book ahead of time?
No, but if I do get contacted by people, I do tend to say, okay, can you tell me more about it? Because some people say, oh, we've got this new game coming to Kickstarter. Do you want to review it? And they just give you the title, not even a Kickstarter page or anything. So I go, what is this game? You can, I'm always happy to send it to me. I've got my, review guidelines as well for what sort of games I do and do not review. But, I do need to know, because I'm not going to say, yes, send it over to me, and then I'm going to turn around and say, no, I'm never going to play this. I'm going to post it back. That's a waste of everyone's time and money. So not do that. But yeah, with playtesting, I say, as long as I know roughly what the game is about, and can I see it playing with my wife, daughter, games group, or whatever it may be. I say at the moment, games group would be online only. So if we're playtesting something, we would have to playtest online. So there's all those sort of...
And it is the current climate that made you write a lot more of those digitalized... Sorry, I know there's a negative connotation to me doing the inverted quotes, but that's just because that's the actual title.
Yeah.
And it's not a well-known term outside of the context of your articles, frankly. No one else calls
no.
And it would be kind of, if I started doing, hey, these are my digitalize. I mean, I could, unless I started talking digitalize, I'm going to try this game on for size.
Well, it's a bit of a play on words as well. Digitalize something, to digitize something, but
Anyway, Adam makes a good point. Yes, Cardboard Edison, and there's a really good link where, I don't think you can link to it, but feel free to send it to a moderator in chats if they're, and they will paste it. But Cardboard Edison, please do check that out, and that's got a link to all the things. But from a play, and if you go there as a playtester and you don't have any games, then of course everyone will adore you. But I will say that sometimes with some of these things, because the expectation is, okay, everyone's coming here to playtest their own thing, I find that it will always felt warmer at a real life convention where someone says, oh, we're here, and it's, oh my gosh, well, let's move some tables around for you because you've come in with this group of 6 people who just want to play games for a wee bit. Brilliant. And then we have and bye, Alex.
Bye.
And Jones is handing back their Pun Club. But be sure, I have kept it for a while.
Carry on. Yeah, that's fine. Carry on.
Design contests, okay? You talked about being a sort of guiding mentor to someone who's making their game. How do you do that? You are a critic at this point. I think it's fair to call you that. You aren't someone who has experience in design yourself. How much have you thought about, the ramifications of rules? Is this something that always seeps into your thinking, oh, if they had changed this one rule here? Have you ever been tempted to design stuff? Do you feel, was there a slight imposter syndrome going into that experience?
Well, there was, but the good thing about the Board Game Design Workshop contest, is that the right name? I can't remember. I always get the words the wrong way around, but Chris Anderson.
Board Game Workshop Design Contest, yep.
Board Game Workshop Design Contest. The premise there was you can be a coach and a judge without really knowing anything. If you've played one game in your life, you could be one. So that premise was welcoming. But yeah, I did think, why would I coach someone? What do I know? But it worked out really well. As I say, I was going in not as a designer. I wasn't thinking about, okay, do these rules work? I was going in more from the experience, what felt right, what worked for me, and then maybe think about, okay, I know a little bit, obviously, having played games and having reviewed games, a little bit where you might be able to tweak it, but I'm not a designer, so you have to make that decision for yourself. And I mean, this one was Escape Earth by I can't remember the company, but Sean Newman, who's one of my Patreon supporters as well. So that the relationship developed after that as well, which was very nice. They even sent me a prototype copy of the game because we enjoyed playing it so much, my wife and I. And so they just we set up a session and we played it through it, and it was more like a playtest session really. And I went through and I said, well, that doesn't make sense. And obviously they could tell just watching me play what worked and what didn't work. But it was, I think ultimately it was literally just more like a playtest session and me going in as a critic in that sense, saying what works and what doesn't work, not as a designer can say, oh yeah, if you turn this rule around, it will suddenly work magically or have this experience I don't. And they knew that as well. I think that's the important bit. Again, we're going back to the beginning of this episode about talking about expectations. They knew who I was and that I wasn't a designer, so I couldn't help them in that level. I was more a consumer in that sense and help with them that. But it was daunting. I was, even as a judge, like, well, why am I judging these? What do I know about these people in these games that I can judge? I'm not a game critic in that sort of sense. That I have, a huge amount of experience with hundreds of games. But that contest is so welcome. It's going again this year as well. So we're stretching. I carry on talking while we're stretching. I felt I could give it a go, and it was again just let's see where this takes us. So I did it 2 years in a row, and even though it doesn't take a lot of time, I've not signed up again this year because I just won't get the time for the time being. But I'd highly recommend you have a look at it. And if you, as I say, even if you know nothing about games, you played a few games, I think being a judge there, it's more about the numbers, having lots of people feeding back. And there's some brilliant ideas in that contest. There's a couple of, there was I don't know how old he was, 12-year-old boy or something like that, who designed I think a pretty clever game. And you can feedback and you can see them enjoying your feedback as well. And again, it's about being constructive. Even if you have negative feedback, you have to be constructive about it, not just say, "Oh, I don't like it." And some of the ideas that came out of it, Uranus now from the Dark Imp, that was in the design contest and got a podium place. There's some amazing games that are in there. So again, if you just want to try out new games, that's the play to do it. And all you need to do is spend a bit of time playing it and then feeding back, or not actually playing it. In this case, you were just watching videos being presented, so you have to gauge what the game might be like. But if you go further, they might send you a prototype and you can play it and stuff. So give back to the community. I think that's again the other driver here, just helping the community, helping the designers make more games for you to enjoy yourself later on, hopefully.
100%. Firstly, bye, Dina. Lovely to have you.
See ya.
And I want to definitely give a shout out to Chris Anderson from the Board Game Design Workshop, which is, if you're thinking of, honestly, if it comes down to whether you have time. I understand maybe it takes a couple of hours, or I think the minimum requirements is basically 1 hour. If you've got an hour at some point, then go for it.
And you can spread it over time as well. So you can do watch one video today for 5-10 minutes and then feedback and then do another one another day. So you can be flexible about it, but I just thought this year I probably just won't have the focus for it, but it's very flexible.
Such a brilliant community focused thing. I don't know any other contest like this where the judges are crowdsourced, which is like everyone basically as long as you look at multiple games, because if you just look at one game, well, then maybe you're just a happy person and you give everything 10s.
Yeah.
But if you are, looking at 3 games, then that can be kind of normalized in the system. And Chris has got this system that kind of makes everything track. You kind of, as long as you're able to look at a video, and I signed up for it because I feel like, I think the first year I joined was 2018, the first year, or 2019. Anyway, there's been some years, I think. But I signed up for the first one, and then maybe I tried too hard to. I saw that some people were doing literally everything, and I did like half of the games, and I might have slightly burnt out on it. But now it's like, you know what? I'm not in touch with people, and I'm missing that from my life. I'm missing the experience of checking out new games, and I don't enjoy playing them on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulators. I don't want to necessarily play through a whole thing, but just seeing what's going on, seeing that ingenuity, that's something that I can appreciate. So for me as well, there is a selfish joy. Like, I enjoy seeing, these are all the cool things that people are doing. So definitely check that out. And I think that's basically all that we have to say. And I think we've covered everything about who is Oliver. Unless we already talked about what else do you value. We talked about horticulture, and we talked about crumbles. Is there anything else that you want to give a shout out to that you value?
I value my friends and family. I think the big shout out definitely to my wife once more. She's instrumental in getting and patient, getting these games played and for me to review them, and my games group as well. They've been patient in the past. Oliver comes yet again with another review copy and we need to play this. So, great shout out to those. I couldn't do with their support, and Patreon supporters and all of you commenting on the blog as well. All your comments are really welcome. Some of you are regular supporters. So please let me know what you think.
And that's basically the end of the show. And when I say it's basically the end of the show, I mean it's going to take me another 5 or 10 minutes to get through everything. So we have firstly talked about so much. We've talked about Zoom humor. We talked about forts. We talked about things being easy to learn, about game books. We talked about going off into the allotments and enjoying the sun. We talked about IT. We talked about general blogging. We talked about enjoying the weekends with families, about the general routine that you've got, about your daughter, about asbestos with the cost. and serious games. We talked about the stasis and the destruction of files and the way that Berlin, the wall came down and then it went back up and then it came down properly. And so, yeah, being mindful of the theme, the fact that games have a responsibility. We touched upon that a wee bit. We talked about spaghetti ice cream and crumble. We talked about Sleeping Gods, which has really brought your daughter into loving board games and asking. We talked about early memories of baking and the garden and your mother and your nan. We talked about falling. Oh yeah, just what more about the walls.
Yeah.
We talked about citadels, about Lords of Waterdeep, about being mean to people, about trying to win. We talked a bit about Carcassonne, about filling holes or making a pretty map, you might call it, about Just One, about wavelength, about Sarah and Kathy Ford, who actually that was before we started, but we talked about Sarah Reed, who's also on the Our Turn podcast. So hi Sarah, hi Kathy.
Hello.
We talked about blogging, bringing about some brevity, about putting that brevity into a podcast, which I think is a lovely thing. We talked about enjoying the process, about I need to take more time. You know what? I need to look down when I'm writing. I can't just write while I'm looking at the camera. This is what I'm learning. I should stop doing that. About Tabletop Inquisition, about Antoinette's philosophy degree and how Antoinette is just such a good orator. About testing things, an opportunity to input, about being useful and helpful, about if you're a designer, maybe have some visual appeal, and remind people that they are allowed to leave. I think that's an important thing. Be mindful of other people's time. And I've seen it so often that after one turn, maybe that is all the information that the designer needs. And in a convention setting, I will say, thank you very much. That's like all the information that I need. But if you want to carry on, you're welcome to, because you've got, but in a Friday daytime playtest, it will be okay. That's all the information I need. Now I'm closing that and let's move on to something else, because on Fridays it's a bit more business-like. Then we talked about contests and Chris Anderson and how crowdsourcing it and bringing everyone in. And again, to echo what Oliver has been saying, if you are at all interested in that, then please do check out the link and sign up. Definitely. If you've got a game design that you would like to enter, then do so. If you do not have a game design that you would like to enter, then I strongly encourage you, if you're curious about what's being made, then check that out. And that brings us to the end of the recap. And if you want to check me out, I am stuffbybears.com, stuffbybears.bigcards.com, where you can buy some print and play versions of Kitsy Cataclysm or the L Deck, twitter.com/stuffbybears for all the tweets, instagram.com/stuffbybears for pictures. You know how Instagram works. Twitch.tv/stuffbybears, where I stream every day at 10 a.m. UK time and also Tuesdays at 8 p.m. UK time. YouTube.com/stuffbybears for the old episodes, and stuffbybears.com/discord if you want to check out the Discord, where you can share pictures of cats, or there's a lot of design chat. And if you want to, let me make the screen bigger.
Okay, there you go, cat.
Hey, what's her name?
Betty.
Oh, lovely.
Betty Boo.
And lots of love to you, Jones, Family Game Night, and
hi.
And Adam.
Thanks for coming. And
Jay Foolsguard.
Hello.
And indeed. And if you want to check out Oliver, where do you like to be found?
Well, I think the easiest is probably going to my website, tabletopgamesblog.com, and you find all the links from there. Twitter is tabletopgamesblog, but if you search for Tabletop Games Blog, you'll find me on Twitter there as well. YouTube is youtube.com/tabletopgamesblog. And then the podcast and all that, as I say, tabletopgamesblog.com website gives you all the links for everything you need, the podcast and everything else.
And that is now the end of the show. And I might at some point, Oliver, if it is okay with you, ask for advice on how to set up a blog. Actually,
Okay.
do you have any quick recommendations for software, or how to make it easy to just, let's say I've got a domain name that I've noticed isn't already taken. I don't want to buy this domain name and just set up a series of blogs, maybe about board game design.
Yeah.
Any quick tips?
My blog is using WordPress, and I think that's probably the easiest to use. But
Okay.
you know, WordPress sites, you can also different hosting options, various places where you can set up a WordPress site. I basically just find probably the cheapest one to get you started. It's usually quite cheap to start, and domain name can be linked to that. But if you need any help, give me an email, and or drop me a DM on Twitter or something, and I'll see what I can do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very
That's all right.
much. And it is our final section, which is perfect timing for Xate's news, because we have over to you. What are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to. And we have saw a big announcement that Board Game Arena has a new community manager, which
Yay.
is Xate. So congratulations to Xate, who is Board Game Arena's new community manager. So
well
I don't know exactly what, I guess no one exactly knows what the job entails until you've been doing it for a couple of months, because I'm sure that the job will grow around you. And maybe at some point in the future you can, I mean, you hadn't even officially started and you already got Loserpalooza to start doing the crew. So I think you're a pretty good community manager already. And I mean, you've got even started and you're, you know, getting me to talk about Board Game Arena. So, but yeah, as everyone says, congratulations, and yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, do that. Sure thing. Wait a minute. I hope it's. Is it this stream? Is your fave stream this one? I hope it's this one. That's a very lovely compliment, because I realize, you know, there's free streams that I know Xate is a big fan of. And you can do the shouts out to Idle Michael and Loserpalooza if you want.
Yes, please do.
But yeah, Board Game Arena, genuinely great place, and I love trying new games there. And if anyone wants to try a game where, you know, we just, nah, not today, not tomorrow, maybe on Saturday, maybe. I'll see how I'm getting on. This is my favorite 10 a.m. UK time daily stream. That's also the only one.
Yeah. Well played.
Anyway, so what are you up to? What are you up to after this show? Is there something that you're wanting to do that's exciting or boring or serious or frivolous? Let us know.
I'm going to have a sandwich after this, that's for sure, and then maybe play a game.
What kind of game?
Well, we'll see. We might play Fort again with my wife. Don't know. We'll try something else. We shall see. Got the afternoon off. I've got the whole day off, so we'll do something exciting. Hopefully, go for a walk as well. I need to get out of the house.
You know what? What is on my to-do list? I have to submit some things to Board Game Geek for the L deck. I've got. Yeah, that's the number one thing. I'm going to have a meeting with a couple of people, with someone from a larger company and someone with Dina, and we're going to see if we can partner up to get possibly categorical, possibly L3, I'm going to call it. I think I might have kind of announced it accidentally. But yeah, also having some food, maybe a walk, maybe playing a game with the family. Maybe I'll get to try out a wee bit more Unfinishable with one of my parents, because that's the game that I'm wanting to make sure that I develop enough to be the headline game for this year. It's basically done. I just need to work out when the game ends and whether you have 4 or 5 cards in your hand. I'm fairly sure it should be 4, but I'm not entirely sure. And also, it's either when someone reaches a certain number of points or when the deck runs out. I'm still not sure. but those are the only two things that I'm changing. And I understand,
Good.
you know, if you want to change more than that, that's a different game. You know, we can talk about that. So if you want to submit, as always, there is an LDEC design contest and everyone is able to enter. I don't know if you saw that, Xate, that even previous winners are now allowed to enter. I decided the only people who are not allowed to enter is myself, my family, Jason, Chris, and Dina. So, like this small group who are, just those small people who are very intimately playing Groot digitally until our gaming group can be reunited.
Yeah.
Reviewing Prisma Arena by Hub Games.
Great game, Gavin. You'll have fun.
Red Rising from Stonemeyer Games just arrived. I'm going to have a look at that, plan some time to play and review.
I'm so jealous. Have fun with that.
I hope you enjoy it very much. So, after this, of course, is there anything else that you want to share that you're looking forward to? Anything you want to give a shout out to, Oliver? Like your next thing? Tease anything?
All I'm going to say is Tabletop Games blog is going to make waves. I've been tweeting about that, but I can't announce anything further yet. So we'll keep an eye out on the Twitter. We'll see. Or keep an ear out. Another clue there. Right, that's it.
But you already do an audio version. Wait a minute. Interesting.
You shall see shortly.
When will this be announced? Can you announce the time of the announcement?
It'll probably be announced end of this month, beginning of next month. So I know it's end of the month, this month almost. So maybe next week after, something like that. Okay,
so within the next 2 weeks, there will be an announcement. You know what? I'm going to announce an announcement as well. I'm going to announce that on Saturday, there's a Tabletop Games live show going on. I've got a couple of videos in there. One of them's to play along with Nano Muckle and Micro Muckle, which is Tom and me. You can play along if you want. The other one is a video with myself, Chris, Jason, Tom, and Miles. And you will find out what I think you might already know, but firstly, the thing you might already know is I'll talk about what the next LDEC standalone game is going to be after Categorical, but the thing you won't have seen is I will show some art that no one's ever seen before, except for like the 5 of us. I will be showing some really exciting stuff. I'll be talking about busy budget bags, which might already tell you everything you need to know, but I'll be explaining what that means. And I will be showing something that Chris made that I'm very excited about, that again I think only 6-7 people in the world have ever seen. And I will be also announcing the second contest. It's going to be there's going to be not one but 2 annual contests from now on, not just a design contest. You might already be able to imagine what the second contest what the second contest might be all about, but you will find out. And next streams, look at that link. You will find out. Tomorrow is chaotic. Anyone can jump in, jump out. Just please don't shout. Saturday, I'm mentoring Dutch Yoda. We'll learn stuff together. Sunday, talking about Quintuple. Monday, meeting Kirsten Lunda from New Zealand. Tuesday, meeting Bodhi, designer, writer, and artist of this lovely thing. And next Tuesday evening, we will be playing Wee Whimsical Creatures. I'm streaming every day. Go there, check out what's happening. Share, spread the word if that sounds lovely. If you feel like more people should check out Oliver, then share, spread the word of that. If you feel like this was a good episode, and spread the word of this one. Let people know on Twitter or wherever you like to spread the words of things. And I will catch up with the comments in a moment. And we are going to rate someone. Joanne is making cards again today. Oh, that's really sad. A friend of ours lost their job, so we are making a card for them. So Joanne does lovely pop-up cards. So please do feel Sate, could you do a shout out for Just Joanne possibly? So that's !SO Just Joanne C. And actually I'm going to have to jump into the Twitch in a moment anyway. Joan says, the mystery. Tabletop Games blog, the musical. Tabletop Games blog, Snyder Cut.
Snyder Cut, maybe. Keep them coming, those ideas. Keep them coming.
Okay, so yep, please give Joanne a wee follow over there, and yeah. So Joanne sometimes does music and sometimes does crafting. A lovely person. We are now going to have a wee raid. I do need to check out who is streaming. Oh, Marky Mark is on Idle Michael. What's Idle Michael up to? Back to Eurovision. And
oh yeah, I watched the stream. They're very good.
So should we do? I always feel weird because parts of me wants to raid Idle Michael every time that we're doing that, but then I'm raiding Idle Michael 3 times a week, and I feel like I should kind of spread the love, even though it's like musicians. You advocate spreading love.
Yeah.
Okay, how about a really energetic musician called Erin Shea? How do you feel about that?
Let's do that. I love music.
Raid Erin Shea live, and please copy paste all or parts of that. And yes, final, once again, congratulations to Xate, and it would be great to have you on tomorrow. I've got Jess might be coming on for a wee bit. You can come on for half an hour or however long you want to come on for. And I'm really happy that Xate managed to get the job, and I'm so excited to hear more about what goes on with there and what comes on. I'm sure that Xate will be wonderful.
Yes.
So for now, that is the end of the stream. Erin Shea, check them out. You will, if you're watching on Twitch, you will be automatically taken there. So, bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye. This is the end of the show. Bye. And now it's time to go. Bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye. This is the end of the show. And bye.
Bye.
And now it's time to all together now. Go. Bye. And yeah, that's the end. Thank you so much for being such a lovely guest.
No, thank you. That was good fun. Really enjoyed it. I'm glad I could make it. As I was just finding the time, as I keep saying about time. Day job and all that. It's only so much.
I mean, if it ever happens, you'd be more than welcome, but
thank you.
Ending broadcast.